Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. This is my channel's monthly compendium for the month of October 2021. Let's get our spook on. Case file number 310, written by Ban the Dr. Mains. Hey, my backpack. Why are you here and how did you get here? Context. If you walk into my room, you'll see my bed plus desk on the left side of my room, a long heater and a small bookshelf on the wall in front of you, and a dresser and desk on the right side of the room. Now this event happened on a Tuesday, but on Monday, I came home from work and put some groceries away and put my backpack down in the living room by the dining table and went to take the trash out, shower, and then go to bed. So Tuesday night I'm hanging out with my roommate, and she suggests we go smoke some weed. We head over to my room, and she sits on my bed facing the wall that my heater is on, basically kinda in the middle of the room. I forgot my lighter, so I went to the living room to grab it and came back. I then started opening a package that contained a longer Ethernet cable, and she said she needed to pee before we started smoking. I unplugged the smaller Ethernet cable out of my router and PC while she comes back in and sits in the same spot. I showed her my new cable, and she points at my heater. Again, she has a full view of most of my room, especially in the middle, and mentioned something about the heater and cable. Forgot exactly what she said. I then plugged the cable into my router and PC, and then go under my desk to move my PC back into place. As I come back up and turn around, my backpack is sitting in the middle of my room. I thought, that's weird. Why would she bring my backpack in here? And then said, where did that come from? She looks down and is in just as much shock as I am because she would have seen it when she pointed to my heater. We kinda freaked out about it for a second, but tried to forget about it. Super weird. Case file number 311, written by C. Landfill. This isn't my cat. I moved back to Illinois from Dallas a month ago and hadn't seen my cat in about 7 months. I know what my cat looks like, and I look at saved pictures I have of her from time to time. My mom would send current photos while I was gone as well. She is a skinny gray cat with a triangular-shaped facial structure. I've had her since she was a kitten, and she's always been that way. The day I arrived home, I called her name expecting her to come running to me crying and being dramatic, but she just stood there and watched me. She let me pet her, but she wasn't like her usual self. I was immediately shocked at how round her face was and how it looked like she had put on a healthy weight. She has always been very skinny. I brought this up to my mom and she didn't notice anything. It felt like I literally had a different cat. The very next day, I woke up and went into the living room, and when she saw me, she acted like it was the first time she'd seen me and did the whole dance of crying and jumping up to me, and she had followed me around like a clingy baby for the last month like she always did. The other thing is, she looks normal now. It's like she lost 2 pounds overnight and her head was back to its normal shape. I'm convinced the initial cat wasn't my cat and at some point they switched places. Of course, I can never prove this and nobody else noticed when I brought it up. Case file number 312, written by Cleo140, a coin from the past? I was leaving for work in a rush a few days ago, and on my way out of the bedroom, I stepped on a 20-pence coin that was on the floor of the doorway. I thought that was really weird, because my change stays in my purse in my bag, and I have no reason to take it out while at home. My partner doesn't even keep change in the house. He keeps it at work for the coffee machine, so I couldn't figure out why it would have ended up there. I just left it as I was rushing and forgot about it. When I came home that evening, a parcel had arrived. The instructions for assembling it recommended using a coin to turn a big screw. Since I was assembling it on the floor right beside the entrance to the bedroom, I remember thinking, what a cool coincidence that a 20-pence coin is lying right here where I need it. However, when I turned to get the coin, it wasn't there anymore. I had not put it away and my partner wasn't home yet, so I couldn't work out where it had gone. But again, I shrugged it off and went to get a 20-pence coin from my purse. I used a coin to turn the screw and put it down out of the way while I finished up. When I was done and tidying up, I realized I had put the coin down in the same place as where I had stepped on the first coin. I followed this up for a while, and I can't help thinking maybe I somehow placed down the coin and it appeared in that spot briefly in the past. If not, that's a pretty weird coincidence. Case notes. So this represents a notion of time where if you travel in the past, you're not creating an alternate universe, which is one theorized way to avoid paradoxes. Because otherwise, if you're traveling back into one singular timeline, you could travel back in time before you travel back in time. Or you could travel back in time and kill your grandma and, you never are born, so how did you travel back in time to kill your grandma? In this case though, you didn't travel back, just a coin. Perhaps it's related to when matter phases in and out of reality, the disappearing object phenomena. If something or someone can cause matter to phase out of reality, then keep in mind that means they're phasing out of space and time. Space and time are not distinct, they are one and the same. You cannot have time without space or space without time. So if you're phasing out of either, you're phasing out of both. So maybe when objects disappear, they can go back in the past. Case file number 313, written by King in the North, 2392. Whoever stole my lunchbox is gonna have hell to pay, if I can find them. I apologize in advance for the wordiness. I'm not much of a writer or a storyteller, so this one happened a few months back, and at the time I didn't know about this page or glitches in general. I just thought it was a strange occurrence, but after reading some of the stories here, I thought maybe it was a glitch. I work on power lines, and one day I showed up to the state park where we currently had our trucks parked. It's still slightly dark as I get out of my car and head on over to my work truck with my lunchbox. Some of the guys had already started backing up a truck to hook up to a trailer or something, and instead of going straight to my truck, I went over to help them. While doing this, I set my lunchbox down somewhere. After helping them, I go to my truck and get it started and do my daily checks on it. We're getting ready to leave and I realize I don't have my lunchbox in the cab, so I get out and go looking for it. At this point, none of our trucks had left yet, and I was having a hard time finding it. I mentioned to a coworker I was searching for it, and he helped me look. I told the other guys not to leave yet, so I could check their trucks as well. Nothing, I just couldn't find it anywhere. I checked all of them, plus the spare trailers and anything else we had in the parking lot. I then went back to my car to make sure I hadn't forgotten it there. No lunchbox. I don't want to hold up production any longer, so I give up and say I'll check the trucks in the parking lot later, when it's fully light out. We rolled out to a different spot that was maybe 10 minutes away, and I followed everyone else so I could see if it fell off of one of their trucks going down the road. Still nothing. I check everything again later when it's fully light out and still can't find it. It never turned up anywhere and never saw it on the side of the road, so it couldn't have fallen off the side of a truck. My coworker and I made jokes that one of the newer guys stole it and ate my lunch, but that was really just to make light of a strange situation that we couldn't explain. Again, not sure if it's a glitch, but it was definitely a strange occurrence. Bonus file, written by Falcon Dagenhart, an old woman inside a mirror. Hello, I've been thinking quite a lot about my experience with the paranormal, and I've decided I would like to tell you about past experiences for anyone interested. First of all, before 2014, I had always been a hard skeptic about the paranormal. I didn't believe in ghosts or stuff at all. But then, when I got into college, I met my now ex-girlfriend and we began a relationship. We are no longer together, so I won't tell her personal stories or details, as I don't have permission. I will, however, tell the paranormal experiences I had myself while with her. To get into context, my ex was an extremely sensitive woman. She was constantly feeling the energy in every single place she went. She could sense people's auras and feelings with almost scary accuracy, and she claimed she had been able to feel and see entities ever since she was a little girl. But of course, I always attributed it to her imagination or mere coincidence. That is, until I had my first paranormal experience myself. I still remember it vividly. We were at home, having a peaceful night with her best friend and watching some movies. To get a sense of my flat back then, I drew a little blueprint in order to understand the story. Here it is. We were all sitting on the two sofas while watching a movie, and my ex got thirsty and went to the kitchen to get some water. In order to reach the kitchen, she would have to then walk in front of a small hallway that connected with the rooms, a hallway with a mirror at the end of it. We didn't pay too much attention as she got up and walked to the kitchen, until she reached the view of such a corridor. Even at a distance, I could see how all color drained from her face. She rammed her body against the wall and slid down to the floor while starting to hyperventilate. What happened next unfolded in a matter of seconds. Her friend bolted from the sofa, thinking she might be feeling nauseous. And as she reached my ex, bam! All of the color drained from my friend's face too. I myself bolted towards her, and as soon as I reached them, I saw it. At the end of the hallway, inside the mirror, staring at us with beady, almost light-emitting eyes, there was a woman completely dressed in black, with a black fishnet shroud covering half of her face. She had no facial features other than those beady white eyes, but somehow I could feel that she was an old woman, and that she was crookedly smiling at us with a non-existent mouth. The closest description I can give is to the old woman dressed in black from the movie Insidious, but with no mouth or nose and with the eyes of the ghost from the movie Oculus. For a couple of seconds, we stared in complete horror. All of my body is heavily reacting with goosebumps as I recall and write how the air went completely frozen around us, and a feeling of extreme dread fell over the room. This woman, entity, thing, stared at us with that non-existent grin for a few seconds, and suddenly looked left and walked away, inside the mirror. She disappeared behind the edges of it, and as soon as she was gone, the feeling of massive oppression disappeared too, and we could breathe again. We stood there for minutes on end, completely frozen in fear and staring at the now empty mirror. My ex broke down in an anxiety attack and started shaking uncontrollably. Me and her friend, both skeptics until that point, looked at each other and basically described what we had seen to each other in perfect detail. We had seen the same thing. It had not been a hallucination. It wasn't group hysteria. We three had seen the exact beady-eyed woman in black in the mirror in complete detail. We didn't linger. I turned on all the lights, took off the mirror from the end of the hallway and hid it inside the wardrobe completely clad in blankets. We left the flat and slept, or tried to, in my ex-friend's house. As I said, I was not a believer until that point, and thus, I had no idea about which course of action to take from there on out. I didn't contact any experts, nor did I try to clean up the flat in any way. The only thing I could do was to try and not to think too much of it. I tried to convince myself it was a hallucination, born out of being sleepy or something, but I would later discover that thing was very real, and it would pay me a visit again soon enough. But that's as far as I'll go on this one. I'd love to hear thoughts about it and what you people think it might have been. Needless to say, this is not a creepypasta or a made-up story. As unbelievable as it sounds, it was 100% real, and it is one of the most terrifying experiences I've ever had. The feeling of pure horror and dread that I felt that night was so strong, I can vividly recall it just by thinking about it. Case file number 314, written by Layla 101, A Road Trip to the Past. I live in a small town surrounded by other small towns. Larger cities are 2+ hours away. My mother and I would always go to doctor appointments in a town over. We have small towns in close proximity, but this one is an hour and a half away, and there is no town in between, only desert and oil field sites. Usually, we would leave the house 2 hours before our appointment, and then we would grab Starbucks since all of our appointments would be early mornings. It's just a little tradition we have. Anyways, we had been going back and forth for weekly to bi-weekly appointments for about a year at this point. We had an appointment at 9 a.m., so that meant at 7 a.m. we needed to be in the car leaving the house. We got a late start and didn't end up leaving until around 8 a.m. We had to stop to get gas or something like that. We didn't end up going to Starbucks and just headed on the road. We were speeding, but not a crazy amount, because there are occasional state troopers and traffic cops. We always listen to music on our way up there. We turn the music up pretty loud and probably terribly sing our hearts out. This time was no different. However, it was strange because we hit a random dead zone with no service, and that had never happened before and hasn't happened since. With the silence from there, being no music, we were talking about calling the office and telling them we would be late for our appointment, when all of a sudden the car just goes dark. All of the lights on the dashboard just simply aren't lit, and then it says low fuel, even though filling the car was part of what made us late in the first place. We didn't talk. We kinda just both looked at each other with confusion, and then didn't say much when the dash lights came back on. The music followed shortly after, and then the entrance to the town was right ahead of us. We had arrived in what felt like 30 minutes, and we didn't really remember much of the drive, like at all. I looked down at my phone to see the time was only 7 a.m. What? We hadn't even left until 8 a.m. We checked her phone too, 7 a.m. The time in the car was 7 a.m. I called my dad and it was in fact 7 a.m. There's no possible way we left at 5:30 in the morning because it would have still been dark, or at least fairly dark, where I live anyways. I would also like to note that our vehicle clock does not change time when we travel, even across multiple time zones. But regardless of that, there are no time zone changes between the towns we're traveling from. And even at that, we both had our phones and we were checking the time a lot at first, debating if we were going to make it. The gas now was also back to almost completely full, and we usually use more gas than what we had. The car was pretty much brand new, and there's never been an issue in the past, nor present, with it reading the capacity of gas in the tank. We acknowledged how weird it was, then spent the time we had getting food and going to the few stores that were open. We went to our appointment when it was time, and then went home. I brought up the story to her the last week to see if she remembers it still in the same way I do, and she does. I still can't come up with a logical explanation, no matter how much I think about it. Case notes. Okay, so real quick, aliens? Maybe. The thing with this is, it's not really time loss, it's time travel to the past. But I mentioned in a different case notes that if you manipulate space, you are manipulating time as well. So, if aliens can reach us, it's conceivable they can travel faster than light, and if they can, then they're able to travel in the past. That's the implication of it. In fact, that's thought to be the main reason why we will never be able to go faster than FTL. Even if we can create negative energy and create an Alcubierre drive, which is basically a warp drive from Star Trek, that would enable us to travel faster than causality. Because the speed of light isn't about light itself, it's about the speed of causality. If you can go faster than that, you're basically breaking the rules of the server and you're messing everything up. Nothing makes sense without the speed of causality. Like even gravity, the waves of gravity travel at the speed of light. Nothing with information travels faster. If it's possible, then it's almost like cheat codes to life, and then you can travel in the past and mess everything up. Like you said, there's no way you got there that quick. And you had a witness, you had multiple states of checking time, so it wasn't some accident where you woke up early. Like you said, it would have been dark if you had, so there is simply no explanation outside of maybe not aliens, but something caused time to shift into the past without a paradox in this case. But you were also transported closer to the town because you couldn't have made it otherwise. So something transported you back in time and also forward in space. Bonus file. Written by RandyBug91. A full sense reminder of his father. Case file number 317. To add context to this, my dad passed away in a freak construction accident a few years before this happened. He was tall and slim and athletic. He always wore a certain kind of jeans, and most of his shirts were either sandy brown or gray Carhartt t-shirts. He always had a huge set of keys hanging from the loop of his belt on his left side. This set of keys easily had 40 keys on it and jingled with every step. Our house was a Lincoln log style cabin in the woods type house. You had to go up a set of stairs to get onto the porch, then walk a good 10 more feet to cross the porch and get to the front door. Looking at the house, the stairs are on the left and the door is on the far right. The house is also built on a bit of a slope. From the top of the stairs, it's maybe 8 feet to the ground, but where the door is, if you were to fall off the balcony, it's a good 12+ foot drop, not something you could easily jump down from and run off quickly. Now, to the incident. I was chilling in the house on whatever regular day it was. The big window to the porch, between the stairs and the door, about 8 feet wide, had the blinds closed, but the bottom was raised so I could see out of about 1.5 feet of the window, basically from someone's hip lower chest level. I was walking from the kitchen to the living room, towards the door facing the window, when I heard that jingle, the one of my dad's keys bouncing as he made his way up the steps of our house. Then I see a person walking across the porch to the door. Jeans, gray shirt, keys on his hip. I'm about 4 steps from the front door. I hustle to it and swing it open. There's nobody there. It was broad daylight. I know what I saw. I know what I heard. There's no way someone could have gotten off the porch in the literal 2 seconds it took for me to get to the door I had come to as good of terms as I could have been at. I don't think I was hallucinating. I haven't had anything like it happen since. But I really wish that if it was him, he would have stayed a moment longer. Case notes. I just want to say that I'm very sorry for your loss. You know, me and my dad, we don't really talk much, and yet still, I can't imagine losing him. It's just that one connection that family has that you don't have with anyone else. And yeah, all I can really say is that I'm sorry you didn't get more closure, but I'm happy that you got something at least. Many people don't get anything, and that is proper horror. Case file number 315. Written by Mouts93. Ping. From nowhere. About 4 years ago, I was working a 12-hour overnight shift in a taxi office. The office was a porta-cabin in the car park of a bowling alley/cinema, which is in the middle of an industrial estate. There is also a bar and restaurant in the building, and it is very busy up until about midnight. Once the place closed and everyone left, I was the only person around for a few hundred meters in every direction. It was probably about 4 a.m. or so, and the lines were really quiet. I had been sitting watching videos on YouTube for hours, when out of nowhere, I heard a loud and clear in my right ear, from slightly behind me, a voice saying, "Ping." It kinda sounded like the notification sound on the Messenger app, but the person really emphasized every letter of the word. The voice sounded like it was trying to freak me out. My heart jumped and I turned around and was like, what the fuck? About to attack the person who had snuck up on me. There was no one there. I was in a locked porta-cabin. The door was in front of me and there was no way someone shouted it from outside. It sounded like someone put their mouth right up to my ear. I even looked out of the window to check if someone was there, even though I knew it didn't make sense. I thought about the possibility of it being an auditory hallucination, but apparently if it was, it would have come from inside my head rather than from a specific location around me. Case file number 316, written by OK, I'm Intrigued. Bodies all over the road, so they say. This happened a few years ago. My wife got pulled over for speeding on a barren highway that really no one takes. When the state police showed up, he was just chit-chatting, which is common in rural areas. He was in the process of writing her a ticket, but then at the last second, his radio went off and said, "Bodies all over I-80 between exit X and X." He said never mind, tore off the ticket and handed it to my wife. It gets really weird because she knows his name and swears he signed it. I didn't remember looking at the time. I was obsessed with the radio statement. Then when I looked at the ticket, all it had was a date on it. I said, "Sweet, we got out of a ticket." She said, "No, he signed it." And when I showed it to her, she looked like she saw a ghost. We Googled and Facebooked his name and the interstate accident, but never found anything. Rural areas could have been animal bodies, but didn't find that either. What the hell did the dispatcher mean by bodies everywhere? Case file number 317, written by Oldie Bookworm, The Silence. This happened in 2005. I was 41, so I'm not young or impressionable. Reading this sub reminded me of this instance. It was about 10 a.m. and I had just gotten back from the grocery store, unloaded the car and went back for the last bag and to lock up the car. There wasn't usually much foot traffic on our street, but I always nod and smile when I see someone as a kind of hello, just automatically. As I headed to the car for that last bag, I nodded hello to someone who looked at me sharply. A moment later, I realized that what I had seen was unusual and did a double take. The person I thought I saw was very tall, at least 7 foot, and was wearing black clothing and had a hat. The face was thin and stark white. If I'd known what they were at the time, I would have said that I saw the Silence from Doctor Who. I did a quick turnaround and he was gone. No other people on the sidewalk. Haven't seen anything like that since. What do y'all think? Case file number 318, written by Sage Wreathed. The very instincts took my breath away. A few months ago, I woke up in the middle of the night, feeling especially fidgety and restless. I had this strong urge to go outside, and while I normally don't listen to these kind of impulses, this time I did. I went outside, brought a stool to the middle of the yard, and sat down and stared at the stars. I knew I was going to see something interesting. My body was tense and crackling with it. Soon enough, I saw a strange red light moving across the sky. There was no tail, it didn't break up. It was just this weird energy-laden light that appeared, moved directly across my line of vision, then blinked off. It took my breath away. But I'm a logical person. I immediately thought, okay, that was cool, but it was something natural. It had to be. Maybe it was a shooting star. I haven't seen a shooting star in so long. I'm not sure what one looks like. At that very moment, a bright white shooting star streaked across the sky, right where I was watching. I was pretty spooked. I yelled, "Thank you," and ran inside. But ultimately, I felt very calm, like I had seen what I was meant to, and I fell right asleep. I also had the immediate sense that someone was trying to get through to me, and thought I was a dumbass for doubting the first light. Like, okay, you want a shooting star? Here you go. It definitely felt like I was bumping up against the edges of something very strange. Bonus file. Written by Leica Phenomena, BB. The soft sounds of a woman that doesn't exist. I'm 23, non-binary, and my boyfriend, 25, male, moved into a new apartment in May this year, and we have been experiencing some weird things since then. The first thing I noticed was when I was sleeping in one morning, my boyfriend was already awake playing video games in the living room. I was woken up to a woman's voice that sounded like a very soft and gentle voice, but also sounded like the woman was very nervous. It sounded urgent. She just said, "No, no, 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 no," each one sounding more pronounced. I woke up very confused and assumed that my boyfriend had a guest over. It sounded like a disagreement, so I quickly got up out of bed and went to see what was wrong. I swear on the way to the living room, I was still hearing mumbling voices in a conversation. I'm sure you guessed, there was no one there. When I talked to my boyfriend, he said there wasn't any voice. His video games were plugged into his headset, so it wasn't a TV either. I've had experiences with hallucinations when falling asleep or waking up in my younger years, although it had been years since that last happened. I assumed it was just that and thought nothing more of it. That was until my boyfriend started experiencing things as well. A couple nights later, he woke up to the same voice. He described it as an older woman's voice that was soft and gentle, and it said, "No, no, don't worry about it, I've got it." It again sounded clear, as if it was just having a conversation with someone in the room. This one somehow scares me more. He said he was waking up but fully awake when he heard it. At first, he thought it was me, but I was still asleep. He shook me awake because he was so unnerved. The scariest thing was maybe a couple weeks after that. My boyfriend had gotten up to pee in the middle of the night, and when he came back, I was sitting up and looking at him. Or more accurately, my side of the bed had a figure sitting up looking at him, but it wasn't me. It took my boyfriend a moment to realize he could also see me laying in my normal spot. It was like this figure was sitting up on top of me. Someone else was in my spot too, just staring at my boyfriend. He turned on the light, waking me up, but when he did, the figure vanished. He was very shaken up then too. I always hear noises when I'm home alone. We've had paranormal experiences in the past, but not like this. We smudge every time something scary happens, and things lighten up for a couple days, but considering there was nothing for the first few months we lived here, I'm nervous this is escalating. Any advice or feedback is appreciated. Case file number 319. Written by Awesome Honey Badger. What do you do when a home phone rings, but you don't have a home phone? I woke up around 7 a.m. to let my dog out to pee. Shortly after getting back in bed, I heard our home phone, which my family got rid of years ago, ringing. The sound was clearly coming from the living room area. Once I realized we no longer had a home phone, the ringing stopped. I walked out to see if it was reconnected for some reason. But there was not even a home phone physically in sight, let alone plugged in. I was wide awake, so there's no chance this was part of a dream. It felt like a glitch in the Matrix where the universe fumbled and had a "shit, she doesn't have a home phone anymore" moment. Edit. A couple people have asked if it could have been an auditory hallucination or someone's cell phone ringing. I was the only person home, and my cell phone has a normal ringtone. Part of the reason I clearly thought it was my home phone ringing, for a brief second, was because my dog perked up when it first rang in the house. Could have been a coincidence, but either way, it spooked me. Case file number 320, written by G007W. Drive, use a road, and the next day, it doesn't exist. About a year ago, during the summer of the Notable World event, I was working at Pizza Hut and made a good friend. We would hang out after the closing shift and drive around. I was living in the middle of nowhere in Indiana, so there's really nothing to do but drive around. Randonauting was pretty popular at the time, an app that gives you random energy points with coordinates, and we decided to try the app out. We were out near some cornfields and missed our destination. I was the navigator and was looking for a spot to make a U-turn. I was looking ahead on the map and saw a U-shaped road with a 3-exit roundabout, the second exit leading away from the main road. I tell my friend to turn into the road. We come up to the roundabout and I tell them to take the first exit. We exit the roundabout and this is where things get weird. We are driving back into the same roundabout. I freeze and my friend is asking me which exit to take. My gut tells me to take the second exit this time, so I tell them to take the second exit. This leads us to the main road. I'm incredibly confused and looking at the map, which still only has one roundabout on it. I said something about it being weird that there were 2 roundabouts when the map only shows 1. My friend has no recollection of the first roundabout. They still have no recollection of it to this day, but I remember it so vividly. The day after, I tried to find the road we took to make a U-turn looking at the map and was completely unable to find the road. It doesn't exist anymore. There's not even a roundabout in the area we were driving in. Ever since then, things have been slightly off. The house across the street from my house is 90 degrees from how I remember it. The main road to the shopping center is shorter. I know this because I time my drives. It used to be 13 minutes and now it only takes 8 minutes. I notice a lot of other small little things like that. I think I got transported to another timeline or universe. Case notes. Alright, so all I want to say here is that I welcome you to our universe. We have cookies, we have ice cream, we have a lot of great stuff. And hey, your trip to the grocery store is even quicker. Not bad. I think you'll do well here. Case file number 321, written by Knock Brew, a guardian angel with money. This happened a few years ago, back when all I'd do in my early 20s was go out to pubs and clubs, spend all my money with friends, regret it, and then repeat it all the next week. I'd often find myself saving just the right amount of money for public transport to and from work, just until I got paid. One week, I knew I had enough for a few days of travel until payday. What I didn't know was that my pay would come in a day late due to a public holiday that would interrupt the payroll system. So I had to account for that extra day to get to work, but did not have enough to get back home. I had a transport card that I had to recharge to scan on and off public transport. After getting to work that day, I had a balance of $0. The whole day I was stressing about how I would get home. I kept checking my balance knowing full well it was still 0. I didn't want to ask anyone for a lift because I knew no one lived in my direction, and I did not want to burden anyone over a situation I had ultimately put myself in. After work, there I was walking to the train station. I checked my balance again and obviously it was still $0. I thought to myself, I either have to walk all the way home, which is over an hour, or jump on the train without a ticket. I chose to walk home instead of risking a fine, as that would have made me even more broke than I already was. Just as I passed the station, I checked my balance one more time, as if something was telling me to, and instead of $0, it said I had 20. I stood there, gobsmacked. I checked the transaction history and there were no recent recharges. It just didn't make sense. It literally popped up out of nowhere and I could not find the source on how it came to be. So yeah, it all worked out in the end, but to this day it baffles me. I know 110% that I didn't have any money. The no transactions to say the transport card was recharged was what made it even weirder. I didn't investigate much further. I was just happy that I could get home. Simply, I called it a miracle. One that taught me a good lesson. Case file number 322, written by Matalina. Delicious pizza rolls every single day at school, only they never existed. Full disclosure, this was a little over a decade ago, in my first year of high school. I only just came across this sub, and this has driven me bonkers for years. I'm glad I finally found somewhere to share it. When I was in grade 10, we had a school cafeteria that you could purchase lunch at. I've always been kinda picky, but the cafeteria had one thing that I loved: pizza rolls that were just tortillas wrapped up with cheese and pizza sauce in them. These pizza rolls were only $1 or $2, so I ate them every day for a good 6+ months. Sometimes I'd go grab one where I was supposed to be in class, because I knew they were finished being made around 11:30 a.m. I bought them enough that I didn't have to tell our lunch ladies that I wanted them anymore. They knew I was there for those glorious cheesy wraps. Anyway, one day I went to the cafeteria as usual and asked for a pizza roll. The following ensued. Lunch lady: "A what?" Me: "A pizza roll." "Like a piece of pizza?" "We don't have any pizza today, hun." "No, a pizza roll, like the cheese in the tortilla." "I'm sorry, hun, I don't know what you're talking about." "The ones I get every day. The cheese and pizza sauce in a tortilla. They're $X." "I'm sorry, I don't remember ever seeing those here." This script might not be word for word, as it's been a long time now, but it's pretty close to. But the whole thing weirded me out enough that I'll probably never forget it. At the time, I figured she must just be forgetting. They make quite a lot of food every day, and she's not exactly a spring chicken anymore. The next day, I tried again with the other lunch lady, and the same conversation happened. At this point, I'm a bit freaked out, so I brought it up to my best friend who's been with me every day and mooched some of my pizza rolls more than once. She says the same thing. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I spent I don't even know how long trying to get her to remember these snacks she's seen me eat and even eaten with me pretty much daily for months, and she's starting to look at me like I'm crazy. I brought it up to a few other friends. No one even remembers them. I even asked my now fiancé, who went to the same school, though we didn't know each other at the time. Nothing. I have no idea what happened, or why I seem to be the only one that remembers these things, but I know for a fact I ate nearly my own body weight in those things in my first year of high school, and now everybody says they never even existed. Bonus file, written by RLNBNS. Another incredible event at the Kipapa Gulch. Some years ago, I worked for a solar firm as a warehouse manager. I was in charge of the warehouse, which was located at the Kipapa Caves. The warehouse was 2 rented caves and the surrounding lots, which were fenced in. These caves were old military storage units dug into the gulch walls. The caves were about 200 feet deep and 20 feet wide and tall, reinforced with concrete. The solar firm stored their equipment and materials in the caves. The lots were where vehicles, heavy machinery, and a few 40-foot containers were held. I worked there with my driver. The caves had no electricity or plumbing, so a solar system and a backup generator powered the caves, and a porta-potty provided relief. Cell reception was spotty at best, so I would have to drive myself out to make calls. When I started working there, I had no information on the history of this Kipapa Gulch. My work schedule was 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. When I started work, a lot of times it was still dark, so when I got there, I had to power up the caves. If the batteries of the solar system didn't have enough juice, I'd have to power up the generator. I'd normally have to do this using only the light from my phone. It was pretty quiet at our units. The neighboring caves were quite a distance away, and they were primarily used as storage, so we really didn't see anybody around. Rarely, a truck would pass by, going up the units further up the gulch. At first, it was like any other workplace, nothing out of the ordinary exactly. But soon after, I started to notice some weird happenings. The first thing that I noticed, which was weird, were the dead animals. Walking around the site, I would find dead Jackson chameleons all over the place. They were just there on the ground, dead. I figured cats were getting them, but I also noticed their carcasses were intact without damage. It looks like they just fell from the trees around the caves. There were also a lot of dead mongoose, myna birds, owls, pigeons, and ducks, all with intact carcasses, with no predatory marks like bites or scratches. Pretty weird, yeah? Now onto the really weird stuff. Every few days or so, I would hear banging coming from inside the containers. The containers were under lock and key. Every time I would hear the banging, I would have to unlock and open the containers and make sure nobody was somehow inside. I would open the containers and find nobody or any animals inside. After a few weeks of this, I said F it and stopped checking. I figured the materials inside were adjusting to the temperature changes. Okay. While working in the cave one day, walking to the back end, passing a certain spot, I smelled a strong scent of body odor. It was like I passed by very close to somebody, but nobody was there in that cave besides me. I walked to the back of the cave, did what I needed to do back there, and proceeded to walk back to the front of the cave. As soon as I got to the spot where I first smelled the BO, I again smelled the strong odor. Just as before, it seemed like I just passed by very close to somebody. I got to the entrance of the cave and quickly checked if I forgot to put deodorant on during my morning routine. But no, I did have my deodorant on. My mind playing tricks on me? I had a small desk set up at the entrance of the cave where I would work on a laptop. I would check emails from the office and do paperwork. Every so often, I would hear noises coming from the back of the caves. The noises were like something moving, and it sounded like something large, bigger than a mongoose or cat. At first, I would go back and check it out, but after quite a few times of finding nothing there, I said no. I again chalked it up to equipment adjusting to temperature changes. Okay. Again. One early morning while it was still dark, before my driver left on his route, we heard a woman screaming from above the caves. The gulch walls were about 100 feet up, and the sounds came from up top. It sounded like domestics, and went on for about 15 minutes. My driver and I figured there was a subdivision up there, and a couple were having it out. A few weeks later, during a lull in my work, my driver and I decided to drive up the gulch and check out the other caves. We drove about a mile up the gulch and came to the last cave. From there, we could see our cave and what was directly above it. To our amazement, on the plateau above our cave, there was no subdivision. No houses, no roads, nothing at all. Who was there screaming? What the fuck? We had a lot of machinery, vehicles, electronics, and mechanical equipment, solar systems, etc. Everything would seem to crap out, even our personal vehicles and property. We would have to call our technicians to come and repair the equipment and machinery. They were constantly there repairing stuff, but what was weird was a lot of the times they would come down and find nothing wrong with the equipment, where all of a sudden the equipment started to work fine. After a while of this, we started to video ourselves starting up the equipment so we could show them we were doing it correctly and the equipment in fact was not working before we called them for repair. But this is the creepiest thing that happened to me there. One day I loaded my driver up and he left for his route. I then had to go do my business. I went to the porta potty and locked the door. Before I could do anything, the stall began to shake back and forth. I yelled out thinking my driver came back and was playing a joke on me. I unlocked the door, hopped out, thinking I would find my driver laughing. But no one was there. I ran up to the cave to see if anybody was around. Again, nobody was there. I called my driver. The call went through and he was already on the freeway. He thought I was crazy after I told him what happened. After that incident, I tried not to use the porta potty as much as I could. After a year there, I was laid off due to a slump in the solar business. Only then I decided to seek out the history of that place. Look up the history of old Hawaii Kipapa Gulch and let me know what you think. By the way, one of the caves across from where our cave was is where the illegal fireworks disposal crew lost their lives. It is said that a crew member was smoking in the cave where they stored and seized illegal fireworks. Case file number 323, written by Another Lost Human, Deja Vu or a Time Loop. Okay, so I felt for a while like something was off, that I couldn't really progress through time the same way a normal person can. It would happen that I'd have this déjà vu that was much more than just a feeling. I was literally able to predict what was about to happen while it was happening. I was also able to remember seeing the same events from multiple locations or through different ways of interacting with my environment. For a while, this was really innocuous, like I was just laying in bed so I didn't think anything of it, although I thought it was strange and remembered it later on. Last week, I moved into my dorm room and met my roommates. I'm a college freshman. I always thought they acted a bit strange or were more uncanny in the way they acted, but I always attributed it to some kind of anticipation due to stress and everything being new. but it always felt like they were planning or acting out their actions, like it was part of a script. However, yesterday, my roommates and I had the exact same conversation twice, once in the morning and once in the evening. Her hair was wet, and she gave me the same response dyeing it. You wouldn't dye and wash your hair twice in one day, would you? There were multiple moments where, in the morning, I had been embodying her body and had to make up a response that sounded like her. Of course, these responses didn't make sense, and I knew when she was about to say them. So I listened in horror as she spoke words that I had made her speak, and I saw that they made no sense. This was incredibly weird and hard to describe. I asked her if she was scripted, and that part deviated back to normal for a second. However, it always went back to the set path. Parts of the conversation that I remembered I hadn't heard in the morning or didn't make sense to me, did make sense to me in the afternoon. For example, I had been given context for it during the day. I thought I was dreaming multiple times, so I did the typical tests people suggest, like checking the time, but nothing happened and I didn't snap out of it. I've always had these kind of thought slippage problems, like accidental telepathic communication or other people saying what I'm thinking, but it had never been this long or sustained. I had a really strong sensation the entire time of dread that I remembered feeling before, but I've never been able to pin down for so long. I remembered while she was saying something that I'd sent someone a Discord message, "Ew," in response to her saying that this morning, and the message was there. This entire place feels really bizarre, and I'm not sure what's going on. I was hearing some things that I could predict that were songs and ritual-like, and after that was happening for a while, it turned evil, and the lights were saying, "Trick, trick, trick," over and over again at me, and I knew I had been tricked into not believing these things even though they'd happened before. There was also some other things mocking me, like these girls that were able to tell what I was thinking. I'm completely aware of how crazy this sounds. All of this stuff has happened before and has been happening for a while, but for shorter periods of time. I didn't take anything, and I know that I was perfectly lucid and was able to question what was happening the entire time. Has anyone experienced something like this? It's really freaking me out, and I feel like it's the culmination of things that have been going on for a while, considering I've been a lot more lucid about the weird things that have been happening lately, that may have precipitated retaliation. Edit. I see that most people don't believe me. Makes me sad. Still, if anyone has ever experienced anything like this, please let me know. I would hate to be going crazy. There's a sensation that goes along with it too, of something really terrible happening, and everyone around me being in a bad mood or stressed out. It's really scary. Case notes. I do think there could be psychiatric explanations for what's going on with you. All I can really say is that there have been other reports in the past from other people being stuck in a time loop. So, if it's just crazy deja vu, it is possible. It's happened before to other people. So, you may just be perfectly sane, but your brain is picking up on more than it should be, and that's making you think you're going crazy. Your brain is picking up on ghosts, echoes from the future. Case file number 324, written by Autistic Tree. I really felt the elevator going up. How? I'll try to be as precise as possible. Hear me out. Yesterday night, I was asked by a friend to join him in his student apartment. I didn't know the layout of the building, so I had him explain to me the way to follow while I sent him pictures of all my turns and doors and stairs to confirm that I was going on the right path. My friend told me to get to this one elevator, to the 4th floor, room number X. I sent him the picture of me hitting the 4th floor button, and I am very sure that the elevator went up, since I got this one feeling that everybody gets in elevators. You can't get it wrong. You feel the elevator pushing up, and you along with it. I exit the elevator. I turn around and send a picture of the level 4 indicator next to the elevator. Then I send a picture of what's on my left, asking him, "Left?" And as soon as I send him the picture, I notice that I am on level 0, and that on my right, there's just grass outside. I had to retake the elevator again, and this time, got to where I had to go. I really felt the elevator going up. How? Case file number 325, written by Big Stonks. Cats are enigmatically powerful. This is just a small demonstration of their power. I just experienced my first true glitch, and I don't know what to think or how to process this. I just washed my hands in the kitchen and looked at the patio door, and my cat was sitting outside looking at me, waiting for me to come in. Normal, because he's been outside all evening roaming the neighborhood. I decided to go downstairs and feed my other 2 cats because they were harassing me and being really annoying. My cat that was just outside seconds ago is now sitting downstairs with the other 2 cats waiting for his food. I have absolutely zero explanation, and I'm honestly freaked out a lot. It is impossible for him to get inside without my intervention. There is nobody else here, and my wife is currently sleeping upstairs, and I did not hear the patio door open, nor did I let him in. I checked my house for intruders, and nobody is here. I have never experienced anything like this in my life. Clarification. My cat is a bobbed-tail tabby, and there are no other cats in my neighborhood that look like him. It's a fenced-in yard, and I've never seen another cat in my yard. Also, the door is a heavy glass door that was fully shut because I checked, and there were no open windows in my house. Truly just bizarre. Bonus file. Written by 9-Fingered Bandit 96. When your mom and aunt tell you to be quiet, you better be quiet. Many people told me to post more stories about my encounters down in Mexico. This happened when I was 13. We went down to Mexico one year in the summer. We were staying with my aunt this time. Her house was pretty isolated, but not in the middle of nowhere. Her closest neighbor was probably a quarter of a mile away. Her house was relatively small. It was a brick house with an aluminum roof. The roof part is important. It had 2 rooms and 1 bathroom. The kids stayed in my aunt's room because it was the largest. My mom in the other bedroom, and my aunt slept alone in the living room. Her husband worked nights, so he was never there at night. I used to like going over there. We used to walk to town, which was about an hour away. I used to enjoy the walks. In town, there was always some neat stuff to look at, mostly fresh fish and fruits. Everything was pretty normal, except for one woman. I noticed her almost immediately. She was watching me and my family everywhere we went. This woman was pretty ordinary looking. She was middle-aged, but as I remember, as cliché as it sounds, she had a big pointy nose. The thing was, she watched us and followed us, but she never blinked, ever. When I would see her, at least. I told my mom and aunt, and they joked around saying, maybe she thought I was handsome. I shrugged it off. When it was time to go, it was sundown. I remember looking back one more time and seeing the woman peeking around the corner, watching us. That's the last that I saw of her. We made it back after dark, but just in time. We ate and talked. I still felt uneasy about the woman watching me, and asked my aunt about the woman. She sighed and told me many people think that woman is a witch. I remember feeling chills. She said never go outside after dark, no matter what. When it was time to sleep, I just had an uneasy feeling and kept thinking about that woman. I eventually fell asleep, but woke up because it was so hot. I remember hearing nothing outside. I hear small whispers coming from the living room. It sounded like my mom and aunt. I went to look and both of them were awake, but frozen with their finger on their mouth in the shush motion. I thought it was strange, but I stayed quiet. That's when I heard something heavy land on the roof. It made a boom sound. Whatever it was heavy. Then you can hear something walking. This thing had claws because you can hear the claws tapping and dragging. I looked over to my mom and aunt and both of them were praying. And I just stayed still, not knowing what to do. The thing on the roof let out a screech. It sounded like an owl screeching, but almost like a human was imitating it. I felt the hairs all over my body stand up. It walked around on the roof for a bit before it stopped. All the normal sounds from outside started up again. Bugs and birds were audible. Don't know if animals have some kind of respect or fear of these things. I asked my aunt and mom, what was that? They told me it was probably a Yakuza. They explained if I hear something outside, never to let it lure me. That's when I remembered the baby crying at my uncle's farm years earlier. That stuck with me for a while. Case file number 326, written by Drin21. When you're asked where your son is, but you don't have children. This story happened last year. That afternoon, I was at the airport and ordered a taxi online to take me home. The taxi driver called me, and because the airport was so noisy, I walked to a quiet place so I could hear his voice as well. He picked me up in a car that had 3 rows of seats. I put my suitcase in the second row and sat beside the suitcase. We chatted the whole drive. In the middle of the chat, he suddenly asked if my son was asleep because his voice was no longer heard. I thought I heard it wrong, so I didn't answer, and we talked about other things. When we arrived, I opened the door and got off with my suitcase and said goodbye to him. He asked me, "Where's your child?" I said I have no children, and his face went pale. He immediately got down and checked the back seat, and indeed, there was no child there. He panicked and said when he called me, he heard a child's voice chattering faintly. I was alone there. I walked far enough that the closest person was still very far from me. There were no children around when he called. Before I got into the car, he saw a small boy getting into the car as well. But when I was inside, he was confused because he didn't see the boy and thought maybe the boy was lying on his back in the 3rd row, so he couldn't see it from the front. Then when he asked me why the boy didn't speak anymore, because the first few minutes he sometimes still heard laughter, due to me not answering, he thought that the boy was asleep. I don't know if this taxi driver was playing a prank on me or not, but he looked really scared. It was top-notch acting if it was a prank. His hands were cold and shaking. Case notes. So the first question that pops into my mind is that you said that you don't have children, but does that mean that you never had children before? Or did you have a son and he passed along for some reason? I certainly hope not, but it would explain a few things if that was the case. But if you've never had children ever, then that is very strange. You know, makes me wonder if we are in a simulation, as I really love to think, then you can think of life as a game. So maybe the taxi driver saw your future son if you choose to have parents, and if he chooses you. Just a thought. Case file number 327, written by Edelia, looking at the sky with her boyfriend, and she sees the grid. I have to start this off by saying there were absolutely no drugs or alcohol or anything of that kind involved. We were sober as one can be. Okay, so this was about 2 years ago, not last summer, but the one before that. Me and my boyfriend, 24 and 25 at the time, went to visit his grandma in the countryside for a few days. One night, probably around 8 p.m., we went into the garden to relax and look at the fireflies that were starting to show up. The sun had set, but the sky was still a pale blue, not really dark yet. Grandma has a bed outside in the garden, used basically as a couch, so we decided to just lay there for a while. At one point, probably just a few minutes later, I noticed very clearly a pale, white, grid shape in the sky. Wondering what the hell I'm seeing, I start asking my boyfriend, "Do you see?" And he cuts me off. "The grid?" "Yeah." So it's not like one influenced the other. We both clearly saw it. We joked around that the sky is fake and we are in the Matrix, etc. We often have Matrixy experiences, so it wasn't really anything shocking. But this has honestly been the cherry on top of everything else. I don't remember thinking of taking a picture, or maybe we thought it wouldn't be visible enough and that it's pointless to even try. Not sure. But we kinda just accepted it and shrugged it off, had dinner and went to bed. 2 years later, and I've never seen it again, and I've tried. We mention it now and again like, "Hey, remember the grid?" "Yeah, I haven't seen it either," etc. I love looking at the sky in general. Clouds, shapes, colors, stars, whatever it may be, and yet I still never saw it again, not even a glimpse. I tried to find similar cases online, but for some reason, I only found people on drugs like psychedelics seeing grids and honeycomb shapes in the sky. But as I said before, we were very much so sober. Every time I remember it, I really don't know what to even think or how to feel. Why haven't I been able to see it again? What could it be? I've been theorizing it's a force field, or maybe a projection of sorts, and the sky isn't really real. I don't know, but I hope someone sober has seen it as well, and can maybe shed some light. Case file number 328, written by Goof Off Corpse. When your name is proof of a glitch. My whole life I have suffered glitches, most of which revolve around a feeling that I'm being watched. The best description is like a real-life Truman Show. I know I'm not being watched, but sometimes the things that happen are difficult to ignore. A few weeks ago, my girlfriend accidentally washed my vape pen. The pen was a Yukon Evolve Plus. I got it at a smoke shop near me about 3 years ago. It is used to vaporize marijuana concentrates. I use it when I'm traveling. It's self-contained and very portable. I had made plans to visit my daughter and grandchildren a few hours away from me, so I decided to stop by the same store and see if I could get a new one. On my way to my daughter's, my girlfriend and I stopped at the smoke shop. I walked in and asked the lady if they had the pen. She said they did not and don't carry that type of device anymore, and really acted like she didn't know what I was talking about. I asked if they had anything that would be comparable, and she took me to a glass case in the corner of the shop. Things were kind of piled on top of each other there. As the lady was moving stuff around, I noticed 2 boxes that said Yukon on the side. I asked to see them, and she said, "Oh, I didn't know we had those." There was a kind of pinkish one and a black one. I said I wanted the black one, and she tried to talk me out of buying it. She said the other one was more silver than pink, and she thought it looked nicer. I reiterated that I wanted the black one. She rang it up, and I left. We started heading towards my daughter's. My girlfriend was driving, and I got the device out to charge it. That was when the sun hit the top of the box, and I saw that my name was pressed into the top. Someone had signed my name on a piece of paper on top of the box, and the indentation was still there. I'm looking at it now, and it clearly is my first and last name. I have absolutely no explanation for how my name happened to be on the box. There is no reason for it to be there, and it is very concerning. Bonus file, written by Anagram85. A full-scale bed, moved on its own. This happened years ago, in about 1997, when I was 12 or 13, and I still haven't come up with a good explanation for it. My mom and I had decided to repaint my bedroom, so this particular day we started by moving all of the furniture into the center of my bedroom, apart from my bed, which we moved in pieces onto the landing outside my bedroom. The bed was a single divan, so there was a fairly sturdy base, with drawers in it, so heavy too. And then there was a headboard, a mattress, and a bedding. At the time, we lived in a big Victorian house. I'm in England, and my bedroom was down a long corridor, with the other 3 bedrooms on the opposite side of the house. For context, I never really liked that house and had a bad feeling about it right from when we moved in, when I was 4. And other people said the same thing over the years too. There were a few other odd occurrences, but this one was the weirdest by far. That day, we closed my bedroom door and set to painting my walls. This took all afternoon, though we had a break, so we were in and out of my bedroom a couple of times. Once we'd finished painting, my mom had an appointment for the plumber to come around to diagnose a problem with the boiler. He wasn't there long, maybe 10 minutes at most. And then we had dinner. It was early evening when my mom said we could probably put all the furniture back into my room and get it ready for me to sleep in that night. However, we moved all the furniture from the middle of my room back into place, then went to get my bed and it was just gone. We couldn't work out where it was, and probably stood in the corridor outside my bedroom for 5 minutes discussing whether we were losing our minds. Then we set off looking for it, checking the other rooms, and eventually I found it, in my mom's bedroom, on top of my mom's bed. It was set out exactly as it should be, with the divan base the right way up, the mattress on top, the headboard in the right place, etc. It was ready to be slept on, except it was on top of my mom's bed, in her bedroom. I can still remember the feeling I had pushing open my mom's bedroom door and seeing it, and just knowing something really freaking weird had happened. I was really scared, and so was my mom. Though initially, she tried to hide it, saying things like, "There has to be an explanation," etc. However, we talked it around endlessly and have done 100 times since then, and we've never come up with an explanation that makes sense. My mom even called the plumber that night to ask if he'd moved it, and he was very perplexed and said no, because why would he have done it? And more importantly, how could he have done it when he was only there for 10 minutes and was checking on something in the boiler the whole time? I should also add that my sister, age 10, was in the house at the time of this incident, but was watching films and playing downstairs. She also freaked out and started crying, which earned me a ban on ever talking about it in front of her. The layout of the house meant the bed had to have been moved along the corridor from my room, and then moved around 3 corners to get it into my mom's bedroom before being lifted up onto her bed. It was a 2-person job for us to move it back, and because the base was bulky, I think even someone really strong would have struggled to move it alone. So I feel certain the plumber couldn't have done it, and neither could my little sister. One thing I've always wondered is at what point the bed moved. We were in and out of my bedroom all day, but we only noticed it wasn't where it should have been when we went to put it back into place. I have no idea what happened, but when I think about it now, it still freaks me out. Case file number 329, written by Quest Prod, Cars from Out of This World. I'd like to start by saying I was never one to believe in the Matrix or anything of the sort until this experience. I'm trying to come to some sort of explanation aside from a glitch, but I have not been able to find any resolution to this. It's not scary, spooky, or some time traveler thrown through space-time to our dimension or timeline. It's just odd. I was driving through the streets near my house at around 9:30 p.m., so it was dark and oddly quiet for a weekend night. I live in a college town in Southern California with a vibrant nightlife, so not seeing a single car or pedestrian for the first 3 miles on a major road was extremely unusual. I didn't think much of it until I came down a large hill and around the bend at the bottom. It was a sweeping left bend with a speed limit of 45 miles per hour. I saw tail lights ahead, right at the end of the bend. I noticed I was getting closer fast and checked my speed, 45 miles per hour. I slowed down quickly and approached the cars ahead of me. I slowed down from 45 to 10 miles per hour. The cars were stopped. No stoplight, stop sign, accident, hazard, animal. There was nothing there. No reason to stop. I realized they were all stopped in perfectly spaced out intervals, alternating between the left and right lane. I felt an odd sensation through my body, like a static vibration. What I would compare it to is TV static emanating from my bones the closer I crept up to the cars. All the cars were vehicles that did not come with a manual option, so they were all automatic transmission vehicles. None of the cars had brake lights on, stopped without engaging brakes. The sounds of the cars were non-existent. As I pulled up next to the car in the left lane, I crept up to look at the person in the car, and as soon as I broke that perfectly spaced out interval, all the cars began moving at once. No engine starting, no gears being changed, no handbrakes being disengaged, just a sudden movement by all 7 cars. There was no slinky effect, like traffic always has. All 7 cars, front to rear, began moving at the exact same time. That static feeling I had wore off the further I got from where the cars had stopped. I passed the cars once I had a chance, and all the drivers were expressionless, did not look over at me, did not show any sign of acknowledgement of me or what just happened. Is this anything any of you could give insight to or know of happening? Thanks. Case notes. Okay, so I wonder if everyone else is gonna get this vibe too, but for me I'm just getting the vibe of aliens, woohoo, we're back to that. So really, this isn't an abduction or time loss or anything like that. It's just a bunch of cars with passengers that don't even seem like they're human. They're almost robotic. If I was an alien and I wanted to study people, I would program androids that looked exactly like humans and then send them down to collect data, live among us. Maybe that's what this is. Maybe those cars were created by aliens in that spot, and the androids were just loaded into it and sent off like programs scattering across the country just to see what's around. There's only so much you can learn in a spaceship, right? Even with the advanced technology, you want to get down on the ground. But you can't do that if you're a freaky looking alien. Case file number 330, written by Prometheus Titan God. I think me and my friend crossed over into another universe. This happened about 25 years ago. We regularly went to a festival in the mountains of Pennsylvania every year. I went with my friend, Tom. We camped out and had a small bonfire, etc. We enjoyed our favorite music from our favorite bands, and we had a great time. We have been doing this for almost 10 years at this time. So we were experts in preparing for a 5 to 6 hour drive, setting up the campsite, doing the breaking down and leaving, etc. We stayed up late every night playing music and doing our nightly ritual of burning all paper trash and anything trash-wise that was non-toxic in the campfire, so that there was less trash to clean up when we left. We jokingly called it combustibles, and would yell or chant as we would throw some on. Yeah, I know, we were young and dumb. This is important for later. At one point, one of us put a buck of something on the fire and it stunk. It burned an off color and put off a lot of smoke. So much for being not toxic, I thought. Well, we both got a lung full and coughed, but we're fine. We didn't realize the time. It was almost 3, so I thought I was going to sleep. We planned to leave for home at like 5 a.m. to beat the traffic leaving. It was a very popular festival and was packed. So I said, why not pack everything up now and we can sleep in the car for an hour or so, then we can go. We packed up quickly, then since I was driving, I said let's leave now to get to a rest stop on the parkway, then sleep in the car if we are tired, avoiding traffic totally. For Tom, it was a no-brainer. He wasn't driving. He could just sleep on the way back till it was his turn to switch. We got like 30 to 45 minutes on the parkway, when I started to doze off at the wheel, swerving almost killing us several times while Tom passed out, sleeping in the passenger seat. So I woke him and said, we need to switch or something. We came to a rest stop, decided to park, get cool drinks and sleep in the car for a while. This is when it happens. Tom goes inside to get drinks and piss or something. The next thing I know, I'm driving in 5-lane traffic an hour and a half away from home. I didn't wake up as if I was just waking up from a dream. I was just in one moment, one frame, and then into another. My eyes were wide open, dry, like they weren't even blinking. I didn't know where we were at first or what the fuck happened. I looked over at Tom. His eyes were wide open. I mean like wide open, staring straight ahead. I yelled at what happened, where we were. I got no response. I yelled at him again. He then slowly looked over at me to say, what? In a slow way. He said, why are you waking me up? I said, you weren't sleeping. It took us the rest of the drive home to grasp what happened. We traveled a 4-hour span of roads in less than 2 hours. We at the time had no memory of leaving the rest stop. I only faintly remember him coming back to the car, and he only vaguely recalls coming back to the car. So it wasn't because I was sleeping. He was awake in the rest stop and he couldn't remember either. Several other things were off, besides the CD player being on and had played through all the songs and was stopped, meaning a CD was put in and was played, ran through the album, and reached the end. We have no memory of that as well. Another thing, we should have needed to stop for gas before that point, because when I left I was low. We apparently either put gas in or traveled that entire way without using hardly any gas, and my brakes before were fine now. They were grinding like metal on metal. We talked about it for years after. He is a hardcore skeptic of anything beyond his religion. He concluded we must have inhaled too much toxic smoke at the campsite, and I went into autopilot driving while he slept. But kept telling him he wasn't sleeping. He was in a trance, staring straight ahead with a frozen look on his face. I don't think it was aliens, because it was a bright, sunny, clear day with lots of people around. A few years ago, we talked about it more. He admitted to the fact he wasn't sleeping. He was staring straight ahead when he came around. We started to remember more. I started to remember him getting back to the car and me insisting I was okay to drive because I had a cold drink. So we drove out of the rest stop. After that it was fuzzy. Then for him, that is all he will admit to remembering. But for myself, I started to remember something that gives me goosebumps as I write this still. I remember nodding off, then being awakened by the sound of branches hitting the car, then the feeling of falling in the car, then a hard splash. Then I saw in a bloody haze, water, seeing my friend convulsing from lack of air while waking up from being unconscious. Now I need to say that at the time of this, I had no clue about quantum immortality, glitches in the Matrix, or Mandela effects. It was the late 90s of my remembering, and the early middle 90s when it actually occurred. I wanted to believe it was a false memory, so a few years back I went on Google Earth, something that I didn't have back then. And when I traced the route after the rest stop, there is a huge bridge that crosses over a major river. And yes, if you look, it's possible if someone drove off the road going fast enough, you would hit small trees and then a big drop into the water. Seeing this freaked me out bad. I sat back and said, gosh, I think we died. Then, a few years back, I learned about glitches and quantum immortality after having some major experiences. Then it all made sense to me. We switched realities. It explains everything. Why my brakes were suddenly fixed. why little things were off, and the other thing, many of my close friends changed personalities. I wouldn't go into details, but it seemed like after that ride home, the world was different. Close friends weren't close anymore. I'm a huge MacGyver fan and have never missed an episode. I was watching it online and saw 2 episodes that never existed before for me. Sure, I could have missed them, but I don't think so. But I actually recorded them on VHS back then, collecting the episodes so I knew each one, but this Prometheus syndrome, I don't know. Truly freaked me out. Big on mythology and my fellow titans, especially Prometheus. So an episode where Mac actually talks about Prometheus. Yeah, I would have remembered that. The truly disturbing thing was the empty deal look in my friend's face and eyes after he convulsed underwater. It was the same look I saw when I asked what happened, where are we, when we woke up in this reality. I don't know what happened for sure, but it disturbs us both. Bonus file, written by Mr. Nice Guy 35. This rocking chair must have pissed off a ghost. To provide some quick background, our house has always had weird vibes to it. My boys have both claimed to have experienced things, and my wife and I have seen things as well. Last night, I put down our youngest, a little rocking chair. Mine, from when I was a toddler, was seated against his wall. I was sitting on the floor in front of it. The room was dark except for a nightlight. After he was sleeping, I left the room, shut the door, and walked downstairs to the kitchen. About a minute or 2 later, definitely less than 5 minutes, I heard a bang from above me where his room was located. My wife, who was upstairs at the time, texted me asking what that was. I said I had no idea. Our son ran out of the room and found my wife, terrified. The small rocking chair was in the middle of the floor, upside down. It had moved, somehow, about 5 feet, and flipped forward. I know he was sleeping as I'd checked before I left the room, and the movement and sound happened within a 5-minute span. My wife was on the same floor of the house and would have told me if she was involved somehow, or if his brother had somehow entered the room. His brother was sleeping at the same time as well. We eventually calmed him down and got him back to sleep. It was crazy, to say the least. Case file number 331, written by Junkie97. A watch tells time, but can it move through it as well? This might not be super crazy, but it has been bothering me a lot because I just can't explain it. I've had 2 major watches throughout my life that I have worn. The first one I got when I was 10, and it had a plain black and white face with square metal black and white links for a strap. The second watch I bought for myself for my 18th birthday, and it is just plain black with a solid black plastic strap. This weekend, I got a Facebook memory of a party I attended when I was 17, and in the pictures, I'm wearing the watch that I bought when I was 18. I've never worn anyone else's watch because I have really thin wrists and they never fit. I'm incredibly sure of the fact that I am 17 in the picture because of when it was posted, but also I'm standing next to a guy that I had been dating at that age. The watch also looks exactly like my current watch. I just can't explain it. Case file number 332, written by Dance of the Plants. Disappearing object phenomena, only this time it's a bird. A sparrow flew into my screen porch today. Birds often find their way in a few times a year. There are 2 ways, through a hole in the northeast corner or through the open cat hole in the southwest corner. I opened our screen door and began the annoying job of trying to save a poor bird who is terrified of me. I noticed right away that it was panicked and worn out. A feather was sticking out of place on its head and it was panting with its beak open. It escaped me repeatedly by slamming into the screen walls over and over and began falling to the ground. I kept trying to shoo it out the wide open door to no avail. Finally, I got a black shirt and figured I'd throw it on the bird and get it out the door that way. By this point, the bird is now only just hopping around the porch, under furniture, into cobwebs. It sees me and just runs the other way. I feel stupid because I'm only trying to help it and don't want one of our cats to get it, and it keeps getting away because I'm trying to be slow and gentle. Finally, the bird is taking a break right in front of me, in the dead square middle of the porch. We are nowhere near either hole in the screen, and to get to the open door, the bird would have to fly or hop to my right. Here's the moment of truth. It's scared, about to hop away. There is nothing within the 3-foot parameter of the bird except me. I say, you know what, fuck it. And I beam the heavy shirt at the little guy. and I watched a lump of where the bird was under the shirt just go flat, like a magician's trick. I pick up the shirt and I'm confused because I know for a fact that I got the bird under it, but I also knew that there was no bird there. I didn't hear its claws hopping on the carpet, no wings flapping, and it didn't escape because I just threw the shirt on it. I would have seen it or heard it. It was just automatically silent on the porch after I threw the shirt, and it was so bizarre that I saw the lump just fall flat. I searched the porch and the shirt over 10 times. I flipped furniture, checked outside of the porch, searched everywhere. No bird. Freakiest moment of my life, and only I will ever know for real that it actually effing happened. Case notes. We all experience disappearing objects, but this is a bird. And the weird thing is it only happened when the bird was obscured by visible light. I wonder if that has anything to do with the quantum realm. The waveform only collapses when matter is being observed, although what scientists mean when they say observed is just interacted with, by anything. Objects do often disappear when no one's watching. Very rarely do they ever go missing in plain sight, at least not when being directly observed. So maybe our observation, consciously, plays a bigger role than we know. Case file number 333, written by Get M. Rue. Do you want to hear something scary? Imagine a bathroom that swallows people. Today I went to a big medical center that I have to get specialty care with. It takes me about 3 hours to drive there, so I always use the restroom after I arrive. Because of the virus that must not be named, the most direct route to the restroom is blocked off. People have to basically walk 3 sides of a square to get there. But it's big, clean, and nice, so it's worth it. As I rounded the final side of the square to the restroom, another woman said something to me, and I got held up in conversation. I watched a woman, who had been walking in front of me, walk into the alcove to the ladies' restroom. I watched her double-check the sign, then walk into the restroom. I hoped it wouldn't be too crowded. I'm a human hermit crab. I extricate myself from the stranger, walked to the restroom, and walked into an absolutely empty room. 3 stalls, no people. Nothing. I opened the back door up and double-check. Nope, nowhere else to go. This woman straight disappeared. I then had the most anxious pee of my life, washed my hands, and beat feet out of the weird bathroom that somehow swallows people. Bonus file, written by Responsible Insect 19, a ghost that looks just like her. Okay, so I'm new to Reddit and only got an account to follow a podcast I like, but I thought I'd share this on here. I've already tried looking it up and honestly I'm not getting anything. So first, I have to explain the story as best as I can. Basically, my family and I moved into this house a while ago, maybe like 8 years or so. But ever since we moved out, my family swears they keep seeing things around the house. I've actually moved out with my boyfriend not that long ago, but I still visit very often. Very specifically, my family thinks they see a ghost around the house that looks exactly like me, and it's freaking me out. And I know it's not me that they're seeing, because the times when they see this ghost don't make sense, and sometimes I'm not even home. It's happened a couple times, but I'll just write down a few examples. The first time it happened, I was playing on the computer in my parents' room when I noticed my mom walk down the hallway to my room. She called out my name and I asked her what's up. She came out really confused because according to her, she had followed me all the way from the kitchen into my closet in my room. When she got to the closet, there was no one there. I had been on the computer the whole time. I was even on it when I saw her pass her room to go into my own. When she told me this, it really freaked me out, and I just told her I didn't want to keep talking about it. I get scared super easily. The second time, I was helping my mom out with groceries. She was in the garage bringing bags in, and I was in the kitchen putting everything up. While I was putting something up, she came in all mad, saying that she was struggling to get some bags and I was just standing beside her watching her struggle. But that wasn't me. Apparently, I was watching her struggling to pick up some bags from the truck floor. And when she turned around to ask me for help, I just stared down at her. Again, that really scared me. Another time, my dad was telling me about something that happened when he was taking care of my sisters while my mom and I were out. Now, my dad does not believe in any kind of ghosts or supernatural things. But apparently, while taking care of my sisters, my dad heard what sounded like someone trying to open the sliding door that leads to the backyard. He immediately got up and went to check on the door to make sure no one wanted to break in or something. But when he got there, the door was shaking by itself, very violently. It looked like someone was trying really hard to open the door, and had the lock stick been on the other side to keep it closed, the door would have slid open. It stopped for a few seconds when my dad got there. Even my dad got scared, and I've never seen him this freaked out before. My 2 little sisters also heard the door. Now, I had personally never had a supernatural experience in the house, but a few weeks before I moved out, I was home alone. I was taking a shower and heard a huge bang. It sounded like the front door had been swung open, and then after that, it started sounding like someone was opening and closing doors and cabinets. I was so scared because it sounded like someone had broken into the house. I was defenseless and in the freaking shower, so I got out of the shower, grabbed my phone, and called my mom crying. All the while, doors and cabinets were still opening and closing. My dad got onto the cameras they have in the house, and they didn't see anyone. There was no one in the house, and nothing was being moved around. It stopped as soon as my dad said that through the phone. Those are some of the examples of what's going on. It terrifies me to think that one day I could possibly be staring right at someone who looks exactly like me in the middle of the night. I've never seen her, and I don't want to. What could it mean that the ghost looks exactly like me? Case file number 334, written by Kook Love. Faces in clouds. But these ones are otherworldly. This was a few years back, but I still remember it like it was yesterday. I was in the back of the car and my whole family was in it as well. We parked the car outside a bakery so that my parents could go inside and get some bread. I was looking outside the window towards the sky because I was really bored and I noticed some weird shapes that were positioned right on top of the part of the city we were in. Now I know clouds can take all sorts of forms and that it's completely normal. However, there were 2 faces up in the sky and they were made of clouds but super detailed, down to the very last hair on their head. One of them looked like what I suppose Zeus is portrayed like in every movie ever. Beard, longish hair, bushy eyebrows. The other one was of an old woman. Her hair was in a bun and her face was wrinkly. Like I said, the amount of detail in their faces was otherworldly. So far, you could say all of it could just be clouds formed randomly in the sky, and that's what I would have thought too, if their eyes weren't completely black. Their eyes were just a deep black, and it seemed like they were both looking down towards the city, kind of like they were looking down at humans. I looked at them for a few minutes in awe, and then I turned to my left to tell my sister, but as soon as I looked back, they were gone. I remember I was not afraid of them, just curious of what they could be. Has anyone ever experienced something similar, or could have an explanation for it? I've always wondered what they might be. Case file number 335, written by Leopard Dot. She sensed that something was wrong. All she could taste was asphalt. This is the type of story I probably wouldn't believe if I just read it, so I'm including screenshots. I've been hospitalized for a week, and last night at 8:08, I got very restless, anxious, and my stomach felt like it was pulled through my body by a string. I was really fixated on the feeling of a road or accident. Asphalt. I could almost taste asphalt. My boyfriend was out driving, so I called him and asked him to please drive safe and be careful. He made it home and I thought nothing of it, until my niece texted me this morning. She was out on her motorcycle with friends and slid on a turn going 80 kilometers an hour. She skidded across the asphalt and her motorcycle smashed into an oncoming car. It's well beyond any type of repair. She's gonna walk away with a broken ankle, that's it. I didn't connect the dots until I realized she crashed between 8:09 and 8:11. The police were alerted of the accident at 8:12. Honestly, I'm a little bit freaked out. The screenshots are of me calling my boyfriend at 8:08, a screenshot of the news article showing the police were alerted at 8:12, and the last one from my niece and her wrecked motorcycle. Case file number 336, written by Save Video. A class repeating itself, but no one notices. I'm in culinary arts. We're watching a video about knife cuts. I remember most of this video word for word. After the video, our teacher sends us an assignment through Google Drive, as Canvas was down for some reason. After everyone's done, we celebrate by spending the rest of the class period making smoothies. Next time that I have that class, 2 days later, we're watching a video on knife cuts. We already did this, but okay, whatever. Same video, word for word. I'm just kinda surprised nobody called it out. After that, we do an assignment for the video. For some reason, Canvas was down, so the teacher sent it via Google Drive. I'm very confused. Nobody says anything about doing the assignment before, so I look for the copy I did yesterday to show the teacher. But it doesn't exist. Nobody has the old assignment, and nobody's done this assignment before. What the fuck? I'm freaking out, but I don't say anything. I'm kinda the quiet kid. You know what we did after the assignment? We made fucking smoothies. What the hell happened? Case notes. Alright, so not too much to say here, it's probably a time loop. But hey, look on the bright side. You got to have smoothies twice. Not bad. Case file number 337, written by Wrathful Vengeance 13. This one is all about caulking. You have to make sure to seal those cracks. And hey, you never know. Maybe it'll be evidence of a glitch in the Matrix. I have a workbench in my garage that I've built myself. A 3x6 frame with 4x4 legs. A mild, steel top bolted down, with a thin backing to keep crap from falling down the back, and to hold tools. After putting the mild steel plate down, I realized tiny parts could fall in between the back, between the cracks. So I caulked it. Fast forward 2 years. No freaking caulking. I kid you not, there was nothing. Clean. No evidence anything was ever there. Hell, you'd think after 2 years some dust or tiny nuts and bolts or anything would have fallen back there. There just wasn't anything. I thought to myself, well, I might have to go get some caulking because the one I used was the last one I had, and I specifically remember putting a bolt on the end to save it, and then taking said bolt out to use it for something else. Look around and sure as hell, the caulking gun, which I had recently cleaned and hung back on the tool rack, was sitting there with the caulk in it, with the bolt on the other side of the garage. What the actual fuck? I did, however, have a near-death experience recently, and I'm thinking I died in that timeline and reverted to a similar one that didn't have caulking. Case file number 338, written by ZBug13. A tattoo shop made the world go silent. I live in a fairly small town where everything is in close proximity to everything else. I had plans with my friends on this particular day, but I also wanted to spend time with my dad, so I had breakfast with him and then planned to walk up the road to the Starbucks to meet with my friends. When I left the restaurant and started walking, the town was normal. People walking around, a few cars buzzing by, etc. A man passed me on the sidewalk, and at that same moment, I stopped next to a tattoo shop to send a text, and I felt everything go dead silent. I looked up from my phone and saw nothing. No cars, no people. The man who had just passed me was nowhere to be seen. Not a single bit of sound anywhere. I turned a full 360 degrees a couple of times, stepped forward, and the world seemed to resume. A car whizzed by, a bike bell rang, people talked on patios, everything. All these things in extremely close proximity to where I was just standing. I definitely should have heard them. I still don't understand what happened that day, and I haven't brought myself to go back to that tattoo shop. Case file number 339, written by That's What I Do. 1. Guardian Angels in Suits. This was in 2014 or 2015. My girlfriend and I were staying in a hotel called Stay on Main. I only learned later about the hotel's history. I only stayed there because it was so cheap. That place was freaky as hell, but anyway, I digress. My girlfriend and I were walking to a parking structure where our car was because we planned on going to Disneyland. As we were walking there, my girlfriend noticed a shortcut to the car, down an alley. My instincts told me no, let's just walk around since it's a nice day outside anyway. She insisted, fuck it, let's go. As soon as we turned into the alley, I noticed right away that a man in a hoodie quickly turned and followed us down the alley as soon as we went. I told my girlfriend under my breath, don't freak out, but we're being followed. I told her to run and get help while I fought him off. As we started to pick up our pace to create distance from him, I noticed that this alley is a dead end. There's no way out but to go back from where we came. This man was closing distance on us, had his hands in his hoodie pocket by the belly. I made a fist with my keys as I turned around to face him, ready to fight. We pass a dumpster. I swear to God, guys, 2 men in perfect business suits with briefcases say good morning and pass us, walking very fast. They popped out of nowhere. They had black sunglasses, were white and tall, at least 6 feet. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't give them the greeting of the day back. I was in shock. This man that was following us had turned around and sprinted out of the alley. My girlfriend and I followed the 2 suited men out the alley back to the public streets. The hoodie guy was nowhere to be seen, but then we somehow lost the 2 men in suits. I swear to God, they saved my life and my girlfriend's, now wife. I'm convinced they were angels who protected us from a potential tragedy. I still give my wife crap this day about taking that shortcut through the alley. Case notes. So this reminds me of a movie where angels in suits were directing the life of someone, directing them to fall in love with another person. Or no, I think they were trying to keep them apart. I don't remember what the movie was called, but this gave me vibes of that, like angels planning out our life. You weren't supposed to die then, so they had to intervene. Maybe your wife deciding to go into that alley was off script. Case file number 340. Written by MRR224, the most beautiful apple pie that ever glitched. My mother was diagnosed with a terminal illness very suddenly. She went from working full-time as a nurse one day and unable to walk unassisted the next. It was a tragic shock for my entire family. In planning for her 24/7 care needs, my partner and I quickly decided to move us and our young children in with my parents to assist with cleaning, meals, and care, etc. Unfortunately, my mother ended up never leaving the hospital's care and died 1 month after the diagnosis. We stayed living with my parents for a few months after her passing, as it was comforting for all of us to navigate a new normal together. Important to mention, my mom was an incredible cook/baker and did most of the meal preparation for my dad, who loved her talent in the kitchen. A few weeks after she passed, I was making dinner at my parents' home, and suddenly, the entire kitchen smelled like apple pie. I actually checked the oven to see if I had inadvertently left something in there. It was so intense, like a candle had been lit, but there was no explanation, no pie or even apples to be found. The delicious smell gave me the urge to make an apple pie, which was not something I would typically want to do during the work week. So I asked my partner to pick up apples, and I found a recipe of my mother's and went to town. When my dad came home and discovered there was an apple pie, he became emotional and told me he had been craving apple pie that day and almost called my mom to request one. You know when you automatically reach for the phone to call the person you were in communication with on a daily basis, and that feeling of shock and sadness when you remember reality. It gives me the chills thinking about it, and the pie was delicious. Case notes. All I can say is that I'm touched reading this. Thank you so much for sharing with us, and I'm so glad you got some kind of closure. Plus a delicious apple pie. I bet your dad felt amazing after that. Beautiful. Case file number 341, written by Cat Powers for Life, a glitch of Forky dimensions. June 2019. I move in with my boyfriend. I own 0 kitchen utensils. He has a cheap set and we use it. July 2020. My mom bought us a new set of silverware. It's a pretty fancy set, aka very solid and not the Dollar Tree set my boyfriend owned. We get rid of every fork, knife, and spoon we own. Approximately January 2021, an old fork appears. I do not understand how it had been hidden until now, but I like the fork because it's perfectly sized for me. From here on out, I get excited when this fork is clean. We don't use a lot of dishes and maybe use the dishwasher twice a week. Today, we empty the dishwasher. We have a sink full of dirty dishes, so it's not like we magically emptied our washer and pantry or something. There are now 2 old forks. I just don't have an explanation. I feel so fucked up over a damn fork. Bonus file, written by Free Cicada 502. If all of this madness happened to me, I would go crazy. I, 19 female, live in a small town in South Carolina. We only have a moderately large population because of the Air Force Base. I've lived here my whole life in the same house. It was built in 1971. My father bought it with his ex-wife, and my mom, his current wife, moved in 2001. I was born in 2002. I'll start at the beginning, but I will mention that I do have a rather fucked up memory, so I may be forgetting things. For as long as I've been alive, there have been footsteps in the attic. I always tried to rationalize it, just thinking that this is an old house. It's bound to make noise. But a couple of months ago, I heard bells jingling in the attic, like our Christmas decorations. It was above the bathroom, and the footsteps are usually above my room, which is right next door. I told my dad about it, and he went to check for animals. He didn't find any. Couldn't even find a place where they could have gotten in. He told me I was hearing things, and I probably needed to go to bed. So I did. Then I started hearing what I can only describe as footsteps coming from inside the walls. My mom heard it too. So did our cats. At one point, it was behind our coffee maker, and we were both standing there, scared that it was a mouse or something. Our cat, Katniss, was desperately trying to find it, but couldn't. My mom told my dad this time. An exterminator came out, but couldn't find anything. The noise persisted. Then I heard noises coming from the faucet in the bathtub. It sounded like someone was trying to force the faucet out of its place. I told my dad again, thinking there was a problem with the pipes. He found nothing. The footsteps and wall noises are continuous, but seem to get louder at night. I don't know if it's just because the house is quiet at night, so it sounds louder or what. I should mention that our attic is very short and hot. It's not possible for a grown person to stand upright. So no, we don't have someone living up there, and like I said, my dad checked and found nothing. Then it started messing with our dogs. We have 3 dogs. In order of age, we have Amber, Bouncy, and Zoe. We previously had Little Bit, who was older than all of them, but I'll get into what happened to her later. Whatever it is, loves to annoy Zoe. She's the most skittish. She's terrified of our cats and will literally move off the couch if one of the cats gets near her. They've never attacked her. She's just a scaredy cat. Zoe will often wake up and snap at something on our back, specifically when she's laying in the big dog bed that we have in the living room. She'll snap at it, lay back down, snap at it again and decide it's not worth it, and gets up to move. This doesn't happen to either of our other dogs or our cats when they lay there, only Zoe. There's nothing that could be touching her, and it's not fleas because she only does it when in that bed. The thing scared the fuck out of our oldest dog, Amber, twice. Amber and Zoe are the most needy, terrified of loud noises like thunder and fireworks, and Amber trails after my mom 24/7. I never saw this, but apparently something scared Amber to the point where she tried to sit behind my mom on the couch, and she's a big dog, golden retriever mix. She only does this with thunder and fireworks. None of our other dogs did this, just her, and she did it twice. No knocking on the door that she was laying in front of, which even if there was, she wouldn't be scared. Rather, she'd start barking her head off. The last thing it does to our dogs is the hardest to talk about. Bouncy is a Beagle mix and quite large. We call her Bounce because when she was a puppy, it always looked like she was jumping instead of running. Little Bit is a Chihuahua, Pug, Boston Terrier mix. Her name is obviously because she was quite small. My mom liked to say she was a little bit of dog. She was extremely sweet and motherly to our cat, Katniss. We found her under our house when she was 2 days old, and Little Bit helped with things like making sure she didn't fall and helping her go to the bathroom. Bounce is very neutral, doesn't scare easily, and doesn't really like to play. However, she has killed cats that have managed to get into our backyard, and unfortunately, those cats were strays we fed and came to love. Bounce and Little Bit started fighting, like trying to kill each other. The first time was the night before my first day of school. I can't remember what year it was, but it was like within the last 4 years. I remember I had a coconut hair mask on, and had just gotten out of the showers, so I wasn't dressed yet, just in a towel, and all of a sudden I hear snarling and barking and my mom screaming her head off. I go in there and we have to physically pry them off each other. Little Bit was injured, but not bad enough to go to the vet, so we just separated them and they eventually got over it, but they still ended up fighting several more times. I've gotten injured before trying to stop them, although I know they didn't mean to hurt me. I remember one time my dad straight up picked up Little Bit and Bounce was attached to her throat and was also in the air. Eventually they stopped, though only until a couple of months ago. This was at 3 a.m. I remember very vividly because I was trying to sleep but was on my phone and my mom called me out of my room. And I was like, what could you possibly want? It's 3 a.m. and as far as you're concerned, I'm asleep right now. Her yell was urgent though, so I didn't even bother putting on my shorts. I just ran into the kitchen. She screamed that they were fighting again and she needed help. I ran out there with a flashlight, not even bothering to put my shoes or pants on, and had to pry them apart by myself because my mom didn't even move from the back porch. At one point, I even hit Bounce in the back with the flashlight because she just wouldn't stop and I couldn't separate them. I was screaming for my mom, and I'm surprised I didn't wake the neighbors with how much I was screaming. It's so fucking terrifying seeing two animals you love dearly trying to kill each other. Anyways, I eventually got them apart and held little bit back. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, earlier in the day, Bouncy had come inside with blood on her, but we didn't know what from. My mom called Bounce up to the porch and let her in the house, and Littlebit was just standing there, and when I tell you I've never seen her look like that, it looked like she had just reverted to, God, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like all the personality and sweetness just drained from her, and I was reminded that she's an animal. She looked so terrifying. I was a sobbing mess and was literally hyperventilating. I just sat there at the kitchen table with a washcloth, just sobbing and cleaning the blood and dirt off me. My mom woke up my dad and he had the audacity to be inconvenienced. I don't have the best parents, but that's another story. My mom decided that this was the last straw and one of them needed to go, so we ended up taking Littlebit to the SPCA. But don't worry, we know she was adopted and is fine now. But it came out of nowhere. I have a video from when Katniss was a kitten, and she was literally giving Bounce kisses on her face. I have no fucking clue what happened with them. This is so long. I'm sorry, but now I have to get into the actual, hardcore crap, if you will. The first experience I remember was actually with a friend. I think it was in middle school, so this would be around 4 to 7 years ago. So I was friends with this girl, Kaylee. She lived down the street, and she would often come over to my house after school and would sometimes stay for dinner before walking back home. That day was one of them. We had been in my bedroom that I shared with my older sister, Tori. Not sure where she was, but she wasn't in the room. My grandparents had this bench filled with toys that they needed to get rid of because we were older and no longer used it, so we were allowed to pick some stuff out and brought those things, along with the bench, home. One of the things I picked up was a Scooby-Doo stuffed animal. Apparently it was called the Friday Night Scooby Stuffed Animal. A flashlight was attached to his hand, and whenever you turned it on, there would be a ghost shadow on the light and he would say something like, "Cover my eyes, too scary," in his iconic Scooby-Doo voice. I can't remember all the phrases he said, but there was only a set number of them. I had it turned off with no batteries because it was purely just decoration. It had been sitting on the floor in front of my sister's bed, which is on the other side of the room from the door. Me and Kaylee were called for dinner, so I let her walk out of the room first before turning off the lights, and I kid you not, this thing goes, "Turn back on the lights, too scary," at the exact same time. Me and Kaylee run out of the room, I didn't even shut the door, and we're screaming about how it just talked without batteries in it. My parents don't believe me, of course. So we ate, Kaylee went home, and I ripped the wires out of that thing and threw it away. Before anyone asks, no, my grandparents' house is not haunted. I went over there pretty much every weekend and never experienced anything, so nothing was attached to the bench or the stuffed animal. Also, none of the toys my sister brought back ever did anything, just my Scooby-Doo toy. Okay, so I have 2 more stories, so bear with me. So my sister moved out when I was 11. I'm 19 now, so I have our room to myself. It's weirdly shaped. Basically, it's a box, but they didn't finish one wall, so there's a little bump out area. For the longest, my bed was in that little nook. We had bunk beds that were in that nook. Then we had custom built beds by my dad that were like loft beds, and mine was in that corner. Now I have a proper bed that's too big for it now. I have a desk there with all my makeup. The bedroom door is next to the wall that the desk is on, if that makes sense. So the door is across from my desk, through my closet. I'm explaining this horribly. My point is that I can't see my bedroom door from my desk, even if I was facing the center of my room. So I was sitting there doing my makeup when I see this black figure out of the corner of my eye. I immediately jump, thinking that my mom had snuck into my room without me noticing, but my door is squeaky as fuck. I almost always hear it. So I turn around, lean around the corner, and the door is closed. No one is in my room. I'm looking around okay, what the hell did I see? As I'm looking around, I see a black hand coming from my wall on the floor directly in front of the door. I had a piece of paper on the floor, so I figured that it just blew up and I just saw the shadow. So I went back to doing my makeup. I took some pictures, took it off and sat back down on my bed, which is across from my desk in the corner of my room. Then I noticed the paper is too far away from where I saw the hand. It is possible that the paper moved in the time I was at my desk, but that doesn't explain what I saw standing in the middle of my room. Now for the latest thing. I have a weird sleeping schedule right now. I'm unemployed and not going to school. I graduated in 2020. I woke up yesterday around maybe like 2 a.m. Anyways, my dad left for work at 4 a.m. like always, and my mom went to bed around 3 a.m. So I have the whole house to myself. I got up and heated up some leftovers. I got something out of one of the cabinets, but left it open because I knew I had to put the thing back, so what's the point? Mind you, our house is old, like 50 years old. Everything squeaks, even the cabinets. So I'm standing at the microwave, ironically it's right next to the coffee machine, and I turn around to put it back, and the freaking cabinet is shut. Now I know I have a bad memory, but I wouldn't have shut it. I don't shut cabinets unless they're low to the ground where my cats can get in there. So how did it close? I should have heard it. It's a very squeaky door. I literally have to open it a certain way when my mom is asleep because I don't want to be too loud. So I just ignore it and go to my room. While I'm eating, my mom screams for me and sounds absolutely terrified. I thought she got mad at me because I accidentally woke her up. I just yelled, "What?" Pause real quick because something just happened while I was writing this. I heard noises and my mom yelling. So I just left my room and my mom said something in the bathroom scared our younger cat, Ivy, and she came running out of the bathroom. So that's great. I hate that bathroom. Crap always happens in there. Anyways, back to this morning. She yells for me and I just yell back, "What?" She doesn't respond, so I'm like, oh great, she's pissed. I open my door and just see my mom sitting up in her bed, and I'm like, yo, what the fuck? She says she heard a female voice and it sounded like it was at the foot of her bed. I'm like, great, someone broke into our house? I go into her room and shut the door, leaving a crack open. I grab her phone and ask if we should call the police, but she says no, so I decided to check the house. I knew I had let the dogs out earlier, but was certain I locked the doors after getting them back in. I turned on the flashlight on her phone and walked around, checking the front and back door, and they were both locked. I didn't bother checking the windows because our house is pretty impossible to break in. I knew no one was in our house. She's still sobbing when I get back to her room. She said that it was feminine, but it didn't sound like words, just mumbling. 2 syllables. All of my family members have 2-syllable word names, so it might have been a name. I asked her about sleep paralysis, and she said that she could move, but the voice sounded so clear. I told her about the cabinet because I remembered it, and it happened literally less than an hour before she woke up, and she didn't even say anything about it. She didn't go back to bed until my dad got home around 2 p.m. Bounce and Zoe were laying on the floor in front of her bed and didn't react to anything. Amber was laying next to my mom and was literally trying to sleep while I was in there talking to my mom. Katniss and Ivy were laying on the couch in the living room, and none of them reacted. I don't know if she saw anything. There may have been something there, but my mom is pretty blind without her glasses. She has bifocals and was also dark. But this is really starting to freak me out. My cats will just sit and stare at a corner of the living room that just so happens to connect to my mom's room. I thought for the longest time that it was the old man next door. The shadow person that I saw didn't feel feminine, but it also didn't feel threatening. I've woken up with bruises in random spots, and while I do move around a lot in my sleep, my mom would hear it if I hit a wall. I have no fucking clue what to do. This, along with a lot of stuff that happened with Kaylee in the forest that surrounds our neighborhood, is really getting to me. I don't even wholly believe in this, but what else could it be? How do you imagine a sound? We're not even close to being religious. I'm not really looking for tips, I just needed to share this with someone who will believe me. When I told my parents about the shadow person, they straight up laughed at me, so I can't even imagine what my dad will say to my mom. I saw her sobbing. She looked so scared. She called me because she thought someone might be in our house, like that's how sure she is that she heard it. I'm honestly so sick of this house. I just want to leave it in this town. There's a lot more that I didn't mention, like all the stuff that happened in our bathroom, and some other stuff that's happened in my mom's room. Oh, and if you were wondering, the place where our dogs fought outside is right in front of that fucking forest. Something is in those woods, and it's terrifying. File number 342, written by Dragoness. Repeating classroom days with witnesses. I started a new job at an elementary middle school a couple of months ago as a paraprofessional. I'm typically in the regular classrooms, sitting at the back table and doing the same worksheets and notes that my 4th to 6th grade kids' whole class is doing, so that when they need extra help later, I have the entire assignment to reference. Occasionally in one class, when the teacher asks the class, "Do we cover X yet?" I will check my own binder or folder and confirm whatever the kiddo says, because it's my job to have all that work, and if anyone is going to remember, it's going to be the adult woman who's getting paid to do 5th grade classwork, right? Lately, I've been totally wrong. For example, I'll come to work on a Wednesday and do classwork as usual. Whatever time passes after that day of work, I will vividly remember doing notes on whatever topic they learned about. I colored the page to set an example of what's expected. I cut and glued things meticulously in a notebook, and I even know which kids I pulled to check on and what they were missing. I could practically reteach the whole lesson. Yet, when we start class on a Friday, that lesson is started again to me, but for the first time for the class. I look at my binder and the notes are gone. I still remember the entire lesson accurately, and I'm even able to take notes before she moves on to the next section. This normally wouldn't bug me so much, but there have been 2 other children who consistently are adamant that we repeat days in this specific class. When I go to check on them, they also write notes ahead of time and whisper, "Miss Dragoness, we already did this, remember?" And at first I wanted to tell them that I thought so too, but we must have made a mistake confusing similar material for that day's lesson. But now I just have to tell them to just take the notes again, because obviously the 5th grade social studies classroom is not the place to discuss reality shifting and the Mandela effect. The whole situation has become kinda creepy to me, especially since when I asked the teacher what we did on the day I remember initially taking the notes, she tells me she doesn't remember. Also, this is my only class at this grade level with this teacher every day. There's no chance that I was in a prior day with another class who's ahead of this one. I would say in a 2-week period this happens 1 to 4 times, always the same kids who frantically check their folder because they're positive they all turned in that worksheet a few days ago. Most days when that question gets asked, I actually do have the worksheet. It was for the correct day, and everyone remembers doing it. Case file number 343, written by Kim Possible, the Extrauniversal Beep. Alright, I'm not quite sure what to call it, but maybe someone can help me figure out what's going on. This happened 3 nights ago. We can't recall the time, but it was past 7:30. I was hanging out in my living room with my boyfriend, and I'd just gotten a cup of Sonic ice cream from the freezer. I was sitting down and expressed that I was cold, so he grabbed a blanket and covered me with it. As he was doing that, I leaned forward and tossed the plastic lid onto the table. We had just leaned back on the couch when we suddenly heard a loud beep. It was about 3 seconds long. We both turned our heads to the right to try to figure out what it was. He was sitting to the right of me. This noise has never come out of our house, and the only speaker in the house was in the opposite direction from where the sound came from. After about 4 seconds of looking at the chair, we looked each other in the eyes, saying, "What the fuck was that?" I was still holding the cup of ice cream the entire time. After about 20 seconds of trying to figure out what the noise was, I looked down at the cup in my hand. The lid was back on the cup. I told my boyfriend this, and he said he also saw me toss the lid onto the table. We're kind of freaked out about it, and more weird stuff has been happening lately. For background, my boyfriend and I live with my friend and his family. Since we don't really have our own room, we get to have the room of whoever isn't sleeping at the house, whenever that happens. Otherwise, we sleep on the couch. We were hanging out in my friend's room because he was spending the night with his friends. We always have been fascinated with his photo wall. He loves the color red, so he has an entire wall of just red photos, which my boyfriend and I have just stared at for long periods of time in the past. We've come to memorize where a lot of the photos are placed and what photos there are. Ever since the beep, we've noticed new photos, some of them being switched around. Some of them aren't even red, which definitely weren't there before. Along with these changes, some photos are completely covered up. Generally speaking, the wall looked messier and less put together. Upon asking my friend about if he changed anything, he said he hasn't touched it since it was put up. Whatever, right? We went on with our night. My boyfriend went to get us some water. He unlocked the door and left, turning the knob to fully close the door. I thought to myself, I hope he locked the door. I don't want anyone else to walk in. And I didn't even check it because I was occupied with a number drop game on my phone. My friend's cat came up to me and I petted her for a while until my boyfriend came back. He tried to unlock the door and he couldn't. So he knocked. I asked if the door was locked and he said yeah, to which I unlocked the door and asked him if he locked it. He said no, because he fully turned the knob to close the door. This freaked us both out. Again, we tried to brush it off. Nothing else happened that night, but there are a couple more things we've noticed. Alright, so my boyfriend and I were talking about the beep and what could have happened, and we came to the conclusion that it might be dimensional jumping. We still are very unsure and have no real idea, but I decided to check my phone's photos because if I'm in a different dimension, there's no way every single photo is the same. I looked at these photos just a few days before the beep and remembered most of what I had, so I knew I'd recognize anything different. I looked at my oldest photos and there's photos that I have deleted in the past, and new photos I didn't even know I had. Some of my favorite photos aren't on my phone anymore. I had some really nice ones of my sisters and they're not there anymore. I'm still not sure what to think of this because I still have photos of my ex from 2020 that I know I deleted. After hearing an ominous beep a few days ago, some things just haven't really been the same. We went to our local Safeway a couple hours ago to get groceries. When we were driving into the parking lot, I noticed that there was a missing speed bump. I asked my boyfriend about it and he agreed with me. There was only one speed bump in that whole lot, which there used to be 4. There's no evidence of them ever being there either, because if they were removed, we'd still be able to see where they used to be. This doesn't seem like a big change, but with the other things we've experienced, this is freaky. Case notes. So a quick thought here. We know that quantum immortality is a thing, or at least we have so many stories of it that it seems very likely. But one thing about it I've always wondered is, how is it decided who goes where, right? If there's almost an infinite amount of parallel universes, and say you die, then what is the determining factor that sends you to a different one, and why that one? Is it the one that's most adjacent, like physically, in the multiverse? Or is it the one that's just closest to your current reality in terms of the same stuff happening? And also, let's say both you and your boyfriend somehow died. The beep was, I don't know, a bomb or something crazy like that, or a meteor hit your home and killed you both? Something insane like that. Let's say something killed you both and then quantum immortality bumped you to a new universe. Does it bump both of you at the same time in the same universe? I suppose if you're connected, and the way it works is that whatever universe is closest to yours is the one you go to, well then, maybe you and your boyfriend, because you're so interconnected, had a very similar universe that was ready and waiting, because you both seem to realize that something isn't right in your new one. Very interesting. Bonus file, written by Sedusa, bringing magic back to adults. In 2017, I was doing a lot of activism work, driving from Fredericksburg, Virginia, where I resided at the time, to Washington, D.C. and Richmond. I was living with my father-in-law, and he had just gotten a brand new car, which I mostly drove as he had severe driving anxiety. During some point after getting this car, I started feeling paranoid about commuting so often, and tried to convince him to let me drive for Lyft so that I could stay local and make more money. My dad didn't approve, and I was very frustrated because he had been fine with me delivering packages with the last car we had. It was a rough summer for me in many ways. I had another job offer with a non-profit located in Richmond, so I was excited to head out there for my first day of work. The day arrived and I felt great. I also had a lot of driving anxiety, so I was determined to let it go and just trust myself. On my way there, I was doing okay when suddenly this feeling came over me where I knew I was going to get into an accident. I didn't trust it. I thought my anxiety was getting bad, so I ignored it. I was about 15 minutes away from my destination when I came up on a parked car in the fast lane and didn't have time to do anything but slam my brakes. I slid into the car, which had hit the car in front of them. My knee cracked, airbags deployed. The hood crumpled and the glass cracked. Next, I was in an ambulance, being whisked to the ER, and I felt so guilty. My dad wasn't mad, just worried. But I was just tired of the bad luck. On top of it, my boyfriend at the time didn't seem to care and broke up with me that night. This, and a lot of other things, spiraled me into this deep dark depression. I felt invisible. I felt guilty. I planned my suicide. I set up a GoFundMe so my dad could afford to move on. but didn't tell anyone what it was for, citing my knee injury. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I told a friend, and she encouraged me along, but also a lot of other friends she had told had made my photo their Facebook profile picture. I decided that God, the universe, etc. needed to prove to me that I was wanted here. Yes, I know how egotistical that sounds, but this is how I felt. I mentioned that I practiced sorcery in my last story. Well, I let go of my titles and identity. I knew nothing. I wanted to be a clean slate. I sat in a room with a yellow candle and meditated for 7 days. I absorbed everything, but attached to none of it. Kundalini meditation, sacred geometry, even fairies. I assumed that I knew nothing at all, and was open to anything. One day I was sitting on my futon, and I just knew I was telekinetic. I've had instances of it before, but I just felt different. It was like something was telling me what I had to do, non-verbally. I felt I had to use my pineal gland, and then I could close the door. I turned off my fans and made sure my windows were closed, and I decided to give it a try. It took about 20 minutes, but the door did close. I know what we as humans are capable of, but we are told we are foolish to believe. I haven't had the choice to not believe, because it had been evident to me since childhood. I'm sharing this not because I want admiration, but because we need to be all we can be and not let anything divide us. I truly believe the possibilities are endless. I know it's not a glitch per se, but part of me feels it's my duty to bring magic back to the adults who lost touch or forgot who they used to be because life became mundane. And always trust your intuition. Case file number 344, written by Ace No 5073. A bright pink collar on their cat, for which neither of them put it on. So this one is a bit tame, but I know it really happened, and my girlfriend and I don't understand how. It happened sometime close to a year ago. So we have 2 cats that were still kittens at the time. One of them hated wearing her collar. She would bite at her neck, trying to get it off. So it'd been a month or more since she last had her collar on. We're getting ready to leave, and as I'm waiting for my girlfriend to get ready, I grab the laser and play with the kitties for a few minutes. My girlfriend thinks it's cute how they play, so she starts recording and saves it to Snapchat. We leave shortly after, are gone for a few hours, and come back later at night. When we get home, our kitty is laying on a towel in our guest room, calmly napping with her bright pink collar on. I noticed it, but kind of ignored it, and a minute later, my girlfriend yells for me to come. She noticed the collar on her. She's asking me if I put it on her. I keep denying it. She started freaking out because she had been feeling like someone had been coming into our apartment, etc. She didn't put the collar on, and I didn't put the collar on. No one else had keys. Our door was locked. I suddenly remember the video taken 30 seconds before we left. We go back and watch it over and over, but sure enough, our 2 kitties are playing and she doesn't have her bright pink collar on. We still don't know how she ended up with it on, and since that day, she still doesn't wear a collar. Case file number 345, written by Griffith Lee. On a cold, snowy night, I was led by a guardian to save a woman and her child stranded. Okay, so I've never particularly considered myself a believer of the paranormal, nor am I a complete skeptic. I mean, I turn all the lights on to go to the toilet if I've watched a scary film, or been reading some decent r/paranormal stories, so I must believe, at least to an extent. Bit of backstory. My dad lives in the Scottish Highlands, has done so for the last 20 plus years, and I drive the 14-hour round trip to visit as often as possible, 2 to 3 times a year. I've always loved this journey, especially if I'm by myself, as there's around 2 to 3 hours of motorway, highway, followed by back roads through the mountains, through forests, and around locks where I can put music on and pretty much just switch off. For the most part, there's little to no phone signal, so I generally download a couple of playlists before I go, pop my phone in its holder, and blindly follow the sat-nav until it loses signal. I've been doing this journey for years, so really I have no requirement for the sat-nav, but I love to try to beat the ETA. It can also be quite handy when it has a signal to let me know if there are any accidents or diversions ahead. Anyhow, on this particular journey I was coming home. I'd set off at nightfall as there's far less traffic on the overnight journeys, and less chance to get stuck behind holiday makers, especially caravans. I fucking hate caravans. I was traveling south in January, and the weather was something else. My car showed an outside temperature of -12°C, 10 Fahrenheit, and the snow barely stopped. It hadn't stopped since I arrived at my dad's house 4 days earlier. My wipers were on full speed, but still the snow kept piling on my windscreen, meaning I'd have to drive around half my usual speed. Every now and then there'd be a short break in the snowfall, and everything just looked magical. It was like driving through a Christmas card. Looking down into the valleys, everything covered in a thick white blanket and lit up by the dim glow of the overhead moon, making it possible to still make out the river weaving its way through the cracks in the deepest crevices, reflecting what little light there was. On these roads, there's nothing in terms of lighting, and what's worse, there can be quite often a large drop on either side of the road. Couple this with 3 to 4 feet of fresh snowfall and an inability to see any of the road, and you've got the potential of a lot of accidents. In order to combat this, there's 8-foot-high sticks at the side of the road with reflective tape at the top, red on one side and white on the other. Drive between these and you should be okay. So I was driving and driving. The snow just hadn't given up, and I was focusing on the red and white reflective tape to keep on the road. Up ahead, I saw the dim taillights of another car, a welcome sight as it was the first I'd seen in over an hour. Everyone else must have known that it was a bad idea to be out in this. Instead of focusing on the reflective sticks, I was now focusing on the taillights of the car ahead. I couldn't quite work out what make or model it was. A lightish, white or light gray SUV of some sort. Holiday makers. I thought this because I could make out the roof box and bike rack. They too must have ignored the warnings to not drive tonight. When I sped up to try to make some ground between us, it seemed to speed up too. If I slowed down, they slowed down too. The space between us remained constant no matter what. I decided that my headlights must have been annoying them in the rearview mirror, so I kept the distance as it was, blindly following their lights whilst being mindful to try to keep my tires in the most shallow bits of snow on the road, avoiding the occasional snow mound. A bit of time lapsed. I have no idea how much, as I'd now switched off entirely, listening to my mix of 90s old school dance. The howl of the wind and splat of snow on my windscreen, and, in between wiper switches, watching the red lights ahead of me, glowing in the dark like the eyes of a demonic beast, intent on keeping its distance. I'm very aware that I'm getting carried away writing this, but it's been a while since I actually wrote anything, other than the daily emails to clients and customers. It's quite nice to be able to put my memories down on a physical format. I noticed the car ahead start to take a turn on the road, and felt a very sudden sense of sadness and loneliness. I was losing my travel buddy, the only other sign of human life I'd had for the last few hours. I then realized that, having been so intent on following the car in front, I had no idea where I was, which isn't an issue. I essentially just had to stay on the same road for 3 hours, until I reached a fork in the road, turn right, and then onto the main road and see a little roundabout. Bizarrely though, my sat-nav now just displayed lost GPS signal, and had me as a dot on the white background. Convenient as everything was covered in snow. It never did this. It had usually downloaded enough of the route to at least keep the map on screen. It was then that I got an overwhelming urge to follow the car ahead. I knew I shouldn't. I literally had no turnings I needed to make off the road, and I really didn't recognize the road they were taking. And, the more I think of it, I've never noticed a turnoff that goes down the side of the mountain like this did. But maybe I just never looked. I decided to follow it. Of course I did. If I ever think I shouldn't do something because it could end up in regret, I'll probably do it. Although as I neared the turning, I started to doubt myself, and thought I should stay on my road, but no matter how much I wanted to keep the wheels going straight, my hands and body wouldn't allow it. I turned off. I didn't recognize this new road. I didn't recognize my old road when I was on that either, so it really made no difference. Everything was white, everything was dark, lots of trees and the reflective sticks. If anything, it looked exactly the same, like I hadn't turned off at all. 10 to 15 minutes later, the car ahead started pulling away from me, only slowly, but faster than I wanted to drive in these conditions. So I let it. It couldn't really get away anyway, as there was nowhere to go from this road, so I figured I'd see it again shortly. Another 10 minutes or so passed, of driving alone, and then, in the distance, I spotted lights again, and this time I was catching up, quickly. The lights were flashing in the dark distance. Amber. Nothing. Amber. Nothing. Great. My travel buddy has got their hazard lights on, and they've stopped. I decided I'd have to pull over and see what was wrong. As I pulled up behind my buddy, a white Audi, possibly a Q3 or Q5, I'm not sure, I noticed the amount of snow on their car, surely far too much for them to have just stopped, and there's no tire tracks for me to pull into. But it was 100% the same car I'd been following. I came to a stop just as a woman in a big blue coat ran into my window waving her arms. I'm not the most empathetic of people, but it didn't take me much to read the relief on her face and see that she'd been crying. She'd had to pull over because she had had a puncture and then explained she had been waiting there, unable to call anyone as there was no signal, and thought she'd have to wait until the morning before she could leave. She'd had her ignition on while she listened to music and tried to keep the DVD player running for her little one, pressing the heated seat button each time it turned itself off until it wouldn't come back on. Her battery had died. I thought she was being a bit dramatic. It was literally only a few minutes and she'd pulled away from me. She can't have been there long. Over 4.5 hours. That's how long she said she'd been there. Over 4.5 hours sat in her car with her 18-month-old child in minus 12 Celsius temperatures with no phone signal, food or drink, and no way to heat the inside of the car up. So this was in the car in front of me for the last 2 hours, but it looked exactly the same, even down to the dark gray roof box and bike rack. Coincidence, right? A big one. But that's all I can say, logically, I think. I suddenly felt angry that the car in front of me hadn't stopped to help. Maybe they thought I would. That's a bit presumptuous of them. I asked her if she'd tried to flag them down. A look of confusion or concern spread across her face. She told me that there hasn't been a single car go past while she'd been there. But I stopped myself from going any further, from explaining that I'd been following a car that didn't exist for over 2 hours. She was scared enough, from being sat here in the dark for the last few hours. I jumped out and looked in her car, assisted by the light from my headlights. I saw her little one was fast asleep. I asked her if she wanted some coffee from my flask, and she said yes. I knelt down in the snow. She'd already tried removing the nuts and had left the wrench on the floor, next to the wheel. It was covered in a layer of snow and freezing cold. I jacked up her car, removed her tire, and replaced it with the pitiful space saver from the boot. I lit a smoke and pulled my car next to hers, connected the batteries, and instructed her to start up her car. Once it came back to life, we stood and spoke. Asked her where she was going. "Sterling," she replied. "Brilliant. I'll follow behind you." Again, I thought. That's on my route. She thanked me for helping her, for talking to her, and for calming her down. She thanked me for the coffee and gave me a quick hug. Quick enough to be meaningful, short enough to not be overly awkward from a stranger. She got in her car and set off. I got in my car. I sat for a moment, staring at the all-too-familiar taillights of the white-grayish SUV with a roof box and bike rack, lit up a smoke, and set off. I sped up, caught up. I slowed down. She pulled away. Her speed remained constant. I kept wondering how she hadn't seen the other car that was exactly the same as her car. I kept wondering how I now knew where we were, but yet we'd not turned off or turned on to any other roads. As we neared the civilization of the A roads, I started to become aware of the tracks left by the new travel buddy. The tracks in the snow were left by their tires. The tracks in the snow that I'm 99% certain weren't there when I was following her, or the other her, before I had stopped and offered her coffee. The snow eased as we entered a town called Kilmahog. We reached a junction and she turned right. I turned right. We were now driving in sleet, wet snow that leaves a dirty gray and brown slush on the ground. Wet snow that makes seeing much harder than normal dry snow. As we approached the roundabout, she indicated left for the first turning. I indicated right for the last, and pulled alongside her. She looked, waved goodbye, and left. Someone, or rather something, took me that way that night, diverted me from my normal route, made me feel as though I had no other option but to follow that car, guided me to a stranded woman and her child in freezing conditions with no food, water, or heating. I'm still unsure how to explain it. I have not really thought about it too much. I don't like not being able to understand things or give them a logical explanation. It makes me feel uneasy. I certainly never thought too much about the paranormal either. I've always presumed if the paranormal was real, it would present itself to me if it needed to. If not, I'd live in blissful ignorance. But now I don't know, and to me, that's worse than knowing. Edit. Thank you so much for all the comments. I genuinely feel like I was sent there that day to help someone. Ironically, I was in a dark place at that time and remember thinking that I could easily drive off the road and it would be days until my car was found. Nothing like being alone with your own thoughts, eh? This ghost car gave me something else to focus on. The woman and the child gave me a bit of an uplift. Case file number 346, written by Alyssa Gina. A glitch to boot. I have these new boots I got a while back. I've worn them once already and love them. I took them off and placed them by the door, and they've been sitting there since then. Well, I wanted to wear them today, so I grabbed them by the door and put one on, and went to put the other one on. The new shoe stuffing was still in the boot, as if I had never worn them before, like perfectly placed in there. The little wad of tissue in the toe area, and a larger wad of tissue in the part where you slide your foot in, and the cardboard piece that holds the boot up. I asked my husband if he put anything in my boot, and he looked at me like I'm crazy and didn't understand my question. And you can tell I wore the boot on the bottom of it. It's not brand new soles. You can tell they've been worn at least once. Such a weird experience. Case file number 347, written by Fugo Pain Train. When you just need gas, but you go to another universe. I was taking a long road trip with my wife and brother and his wife from Iowa to see our parents in California. I was running low on fuel and didn't think I had enough gas to make it to the nearest major town, so I saw on my phone GPS there was a gas station about 9 miles out of the way. Upon driving there, we all got an uneasy feeling about the town and the drive seemed much longer than 9 miles as the GPS said. When we finally got there, it was about 8 p.m. on a Friday night, yet it seemed like a ghost town. Most houses were dark. There was only one other car that we saw and the gas station was closed, so we had to use a card. We all felt a deep unease in the pit of our stomachs and tried to pump the gas as fast as humanly possible to get the hell out of there. We finally did, and the drive back seemed normal and much shorter than it was there, and our trip continued as usual. Later, we were telling our parents about the weird town and how it felt soul-sucking. I went to show them on my GPS because it would show up in recent search history, but it was missing. I went to the general area on the map because I remembered where it was, and there weren't any small towns at all, not even a gas station for 30 miles in all directions. My conclusion is that my brother and our wives passed into a parallel universe somehow to where that town exists, and since it wasn't our Earth, it explained the sense of dread overcoming our bodies. Case notes. This seems to happen frequently, doesn't it? Crossovers, but not quantum immortality where you're permanently transferred over, like a character transfer in an MMORPG, but it's permanent. It's more like in RuneScape where you can switch servers whenever you want. Although in this case you have no idea why it happens, and I don't either. Why do we sometimes cross over, and why is it temporary? Sometimes people are just able to witness the other universe, but it's almost like a flash, a brief glimpse into it, but not really seeing it or being there. And it was your whole group that did this too. Maybe actually what's happening is that we're on a sort of rail system, in a sense, a path that we're supposed to follow, but we still have limited free will, or even full free will. And if we deviate from the expected path in this universe, then we can cross over temporarily, until we shift back to where we were supposed to be. Yeah, that could be it. Bonus file, written by Anonymous. A persistent creepy presence in her family home. When I was a baby, my parents bought an old house in a historical society that used to be a toll house way back in the day. It's approximately 315 years old, but I think I'm lowballing it. I had never felt completely safe in that house for the 25 years I lived there. When I was a kid, I thought it was normal to just always feel like you were being watched and to feel something hanging on your back. I wasn't allowed to go over to people's houses or have anybody over until I got to middle school. I remember going to a friend's normal modern house when I was 12 and immediately feeling safe and private. I didn't feel eyes burning into me. It was so strange to feel that, and I remember dreading going home. It didn't fully click that my house was odd though, until friends came over and they said my house was creepy. I remember going to the bathroom while they were waiting in my bedroom. My dad was asleep in the bed and mom was in her office working. One floor and several rooms adjacent away. I came back from the bathroom and they asked me who I was talking to. I said, I wasn't talking at all, I was in the bathroom. And I remember my one friend telling me she heard two women whispering just outside my door, She thought I was talking to my mom. That moment really chilled me. They were afraid to sleep in my room and ended up staying awake all night. I remember most nights when I would go to bed, it would feel like a man was watching me through my window. I slept on the second floor. It felt like there would be somebody standing on the roof watching me, even though I know there physically was nobody there. I begged my mom for years to get curtains, but she refused. She refused to put any curtains up in the house, and I always felt watched from the roof and backyard. I eventually put up blankets to feel safe, but I still felt eyes burning into me. We had a decently furnished basement where my brother and I had all our video game stuff. Anytime I brought friends down there, they would always ask to go back upstairs instead, but never said why. I grew to love and hate the basement as it was a respite from my mother, but then I would have to deal with the door opening and shutting by itself, as well as feeling hands on my ankles from time to time if I tried to nap. I remember one time asking my brother if he ever experienced that, and he said he would often feel a sensation of a hand by his feet, but ignored it because it was that or deal with my mother. Not getting into that can of worms, but yes, we preferred being terrified instead of dealing with our mother. It soon became a running joke not to go into the basement unless you wanted to get grabbed, and it became normal to just feel fucking uncomfortable down there at all times. Not many things happened to me physically at that house. Almost always it was feelings of being watched or seeing a figure in my peripheral vision only to turn around and nothing be there. There are a few more things of note that I can think of now, and one is that there were regularly footsteps in my parents' bedroom, but unlike everything else that happened in that house, this was comforting. In the summer, we would sleep on my parents' floor because it saved on AC. I would stay up very late on my Game Boy while my parents slept, but frequently the sound and feeling of footsteps would go by me on the floor. This was when I was very young and it was just a normal thing, and they made me feel safe, like whoever was walking around was making sure everything was alright. Even as I got older, I would sit in the room directly below. If I heard footsteps up there while my parents were in the other rooms, I kinda felt at ease, like whoever was up there wanted me to know they were there. Also, we had quite a large backyard, about an acre of land, and it was really pretty, but I would often have terrifying nightmares of it most nights. I would have bad dreams about people dragging me out there or wild animals attacking me while figures watched. I honestly believe people may have died out there. I stayed out of the backyard as much as possible when I lived there, and those dreams plagued me for years. The last thing I can think of off the top of my head was when I was in my senior year of high school. My mom and I were really at odds as I was the only child left in the house. She kept asking me to go to sleep on the floor in the living room. At this point in my life, she slept on the couch and my dad slept in the bed because he genuinely snores so loud she couldn't take it. I really didn't want to sleep in there with her. The living room has 4 large windows, 2 facing outside and 2 facing the backyard. I hated it. I reluctantly agreed, and I remember her leaving the TV on some animal channel when she fell asleep. I was laying on the floor on my phone when suddenly I felt a full hand, palm and fingers, lay on the back of my head and very quickly shove my head down into the pillow. I'm getting anxious typing about it. The only people home were my mom, myself, and my dad. I could hear my dad snoring upstairs, and my mom was 5 feet away on my couch. I was utterly terrified and I yelled, "Stop!" and hid under my pillow in fear. My mom freaked out and had no idea what was going on, and I was too afraid to move. She didn't believe me when I told her what had happened, and I remember going back up to my bedroom and praying to whatever God would listen to keep me safe from whatever had done that. I could still feel the phantom sensation of that hand, and I remember basically never going into the living room again after that unless it was daytime and somebody else was with me. The older I got, the less safe I felt in that house. I eventually isolated myself in my bedroom when I wasn't at school or work, but I couldn't fall asleep until 8 or 9 in the morning. I just always felt watched. I started buying white and black candles from the local pagan store as they told me white was to promote positive energy and black was to protect my mind. You can imagine after 25 years of weird shit and feeling unsafe, I was willing to try anything to keep me feeling somewhat sane. It helped a lot, but maybe it was just a placebo, who knows. Now I live in an apartment very far away from that house and experience 0 paranormal things. I don't feel watched, I don't feel scared, and I don't have nightmares. I finally feel safe. I hate going there to visit my parents. Case file number 348, written by Abbott23, a classic VHS glitch. This all started a few weeks ago when my husband decided to go into his parents' attic in the garage to see if any of his old Pokemon cards were worth any money. His mom has kept literally every toy he's ever had, so there are dozens of boxes of things that we've been going through. We found a box that clearly hasn't been opened in a long time. It was taped up and had plastic grocery bags laid on the top from a store that hasn't been in our town since the 90s, and it's full of his family's old VHS home videos. His parents documented so much of his childhood, so every night we've watched a home video after supper with his parents, and it's been really fun. The videos are from the late 80s, early 90s. A few nights ago, my husband put a new tape in the VHS player, and the first thing we see is my cousin's 16th birthday party from 1994, and I am in the video. His parents have no idea how they have this tape, and the weirder thing is, we have no idea who filmed this tape. I've asked all my aunts and uncles, and no one knows what I'm talking about. The video also has me hunting for Easter eggs at my aunt's house, also in 1994. My parents never owned a video camera, so it's not their tape. It doesn't make any sense how my in-laws have this tape. We've been trying to come up with a logical explanation for this, but we can't. My in-laws say the box of tapes hasn't been opened since they put it in the attic when the garage was built in 2002, which is before I even met my husband. I would have only been 11 years old when they built this garage, so it's been up there the entire time. It's not like I somehow brought this tape over and forgot about it. Case notes. I wonder if somehow the VHS tape was from a different parallel universe, and somehow it crossed over. Of course, we know we can cross over, but it's our consciousness, which isn't physical, it's energy. Can physical objects cross over too? Maybe. And if so, it would explain the contents of the tape, which couldn't have happened in this reality. And yet, there they are, in video evidence. Case file number 349, written by Arneed Bowwow. Even dealing with the DMV is a bit less confusing than this glitch. This is something weird that happened to me a few years ago. I was filling out paperwork for a new job when I realized my driver's license was missing. I had no idea where it could have been, because I always keep it in my wallet. After a day or so of looking all around my car, apartment, boyfriend's car, etc., I went and got a new license. Next week, I go to start my new job. The HR building was the only place I had been at this company up until that point. It was located a couple of streets over and had a different parking lot than the deck I would be parking every day. So, my first day of work was the first time I had ever been on that deck. I parked and started walking towards the elevators. I was almost at the elevator when I noticed something on the ground a few feet in front of me. It was my lost driver's license. I have no idea how it got there in that parking deck. I know I didn't somehow drop it that morning because it was in front of me. I noticed it as I was walking towards it. I know this story isn't that big a deal, but it was just so strange that I still think about it sometimes. Case file number 350, written by Miser Cakes. All I want to do is plug in my phone, and then the universe goes and changes the outlet. Bad universe. I'm gonna try to keep this short, but it's really been freaking me out. I recently traveled across the country, stayed for 2 weeks and returned Sunday. I was visiting my boyfriend, and we had a very emotional departure. I always pay extra for window seats on planes. I love being able to watch out of them. I board the plane, and the window seat doesn't have a window. It's just a plain wall. I was aggravated, but I brushed it off. I was very emotional, and ended up falling asleep on the plane. I woke up suddenly, had no idea what time it was, where in the sky I was, how much longer I had on the flight, or how long I had been asleep. I felt very wrong, and like something was just incorrect. I almost felt scared and definitely confused. I landed, I got picked up by a friend, stayed at her house, then went home yesterday. As I walked into my house, I felt sort of out of place, but I chalked it up to me being gone for 2 weeks. I eventually went downstairs to my room, and I instantly felt that something was different. It didn't seem like it was my room, almost like it was someone else's and I was just in it. I was very emotional still, very tired, and I just wanted to unload my bags, so I ignored it. And a few minutes later, I went to plug in my phone charger, and the outlet was in the wrong spot. I have my bathroom door/wall, then my nightstand, then my bed, then another outlet on the other side of my bed. I always complain about how plugging my charger up in that outlet bends the cord, as I have to pull it up on top of the nightstand to use it, as the other outlet has other things plugged in. The nightstand is up against the wall, and my bed is up against the nightstand, and the other outlet perfectly lines up to where it's right at the other edge of the mattress. Now, the outlet is between the nightstand and my bed, up higher on the wall to where it's above the mattress and by the pillows. It's a good 3 to 4 inches to the left. I know it's moved. I have even pulled up pictures and videos that have had my room in them, and the outlet isn't visible in them, as it was behind the nightstand. I live alone, so it's not a matter of my furniture being moved, and everything else is in the exact same spot it's always been in. I have no explanation for it, and it's bugging me. Could I have slipped into another dimension or reality? Or am I just going crazy? Or is there somehow a logical explanation? Edit. I've gotten a lot more replies than I thought I would, and a lot of these theories are really interesting to me, and I'm going to take the time in the next couple of weeks to look more into them. No one was in my house at all. My child and his father were at his house the entire 2 weeks, and his father doesn't have a key or any other way to access the house. No one was house sitting, and I don't think someone would break in just to change my outlet position. As for pictures, I didn't mean I had a previous picture of my room and that wall alone, by itself. I was referring to pictures and videos of my son running and playing in my room, and I don't feel comfortable posting content of him here. But I have asked my child's father about it now, and he also agrees that it seems to be moved. And as for my mental health, I was emotional, but not hysterical. It has crossed my mind that maybe I was jet-lagged, overly tired, or stressed or something, but I've caught up on sleep and I don't feel stressed or emotional or anything now, and I can still clearly remember it being in a different spot than what it is now. Case file number 351, written by One-Eyed Coral. This is one hell of a gassy glitch. I thought long and hard about posting this or not, because it will look like I'm trolling or stupid, which I very well may be, but I swear to you, I'm not making this up. So this happened today. I was sitting on the toilet, doing my thing, when suddenly and out of nowhere, I hear this very clear fart noise, for lack of a better term. And yeah, I'm 100% sure it wasn't coming from me. Immediately, I was like, what the fuck? It sort of sounded like a cartoonish fart, or like something you would hear in a comedy movie, and it sounded like it was coming from someone standing right next to me, but as you can imagine, there was no one else in the bathroom. I live alone in a second-floor apartment. I guess the most logical explanation, besides myself, would be it was a neighbor, but I really doubt that. Never heard anything like this before, and there was no one outside underneath my bathroom window or anything like that. I just know it wasn't me, because usually I don't get spooked by my own farts, and this may sound a little gross, for science, but here's the thing, when I'm letting out a product while sitting on the toilet, that sound is coming from underneath or behind me, but the sound I heard was very clearly coming from besides me. It was to my right. I mean, that's not how farts work, right? I don't know what else to say about this experience, but here's my conclusion. I think some kind of entity or energy, or whatever you want to call it, it can't possibly be a poop demon, was with me in that bathroom, making that cartoonish fart noise. This was its way to imitate or mock me. Sounds weird, but somehow that makes the most sense to me. That's what I felt, at least. So that's my wonderful poop ghost encounter. Thoughts? Bonus file, written by Care Representative 49. When you adopt one cat and get an extra ghost cat as a bonus. Background information. I rescued a black cat, Maine Coon, Bombay mix, about 2 years ago. I named him Gomez, after Gomez Adams, of course, because he's super affectionate and very needy, as he was abused prior to me adopting him. Recently, he has been acting a bit odd, more than usual, I should say. Prior to this experience, he has occasionally seemed like he was chasing or playing with something else, but obviously, I saw nothing. He is a cat though, so they do weird things like having the zoomies at random times. But I have also occasionally felt a cat rubbing against my leg, and when I look down, Gomez is nowhere in sight. I had not thought much of it due to my mental health issues, along with psychiatric medications. Moving forward, all these experiences seem to lead to another possible option. Gomez came with a paranormal buddy. A few nights ago, around 5 to 6 a.m., Gomez kept desperately trying to wake me up and would not leave me alone. I thought nothing of it as he occasionally does this if he does not sleep well and requires extra cuddles at night. Then he finally left me alone after like 30 to 45 minutes, so whatever, no big deal. Went back to sleep. his food dispensed from his little robot feeder, and he jumped down to eat. Not too long after, I felt paws crawl on my hip and lie down. This is where he normally sleeps, so again, no big deal. Well, I then heard Gomez crunching on his food, so I got confused and slightly woke up. I swear, I saw another cat lying on me. It looked like white with spots, so definitely not Gomez. Then Gomez jumped up, the weight lifted off my hip, and then he laid down on me. So long story short, I'm not sure if I was hallucinating, night terrors, sleep paralysis, and bipolar for the win, still dreaming while half awake, or I had a ghost cat in my house. Gomez has been running around a lot more than normal and staring off in my room, occasionally seeming like he is following something with his gaze. With all of that being said, if I adopted Gomez and he came with a little ghost companion, I get 2 cats for the price of 1, and only one of them eats and requires vet insurance, so I'm going to mark it as a win. Update. Spooky Ghost Cat's name is now Jinx, since the gender is unknown, and also, 2 things said at the same time with 1 name, and I got 2 cats for 1. Case notes. By this point I would say I'm fairly confident that ghosts exist. Maybe they're just echoes of people, humans, but there's no reason it couldn't apply to animals as well. I mean, they are sentient. If you want to say, do they have souls? Well, depends how you would define a soul, right? Could they leave an imprint behind like humans do? Sure, why not? It's not as common to see them, though. Maybe they have to be a certain level of intelligence. I don't know. How many animal spirits are there out there? Case file number 352, written by Abandoned Truck Stop. When you seat your guests before they even arrive. When I was in college, I worked at a sports bar/restaurant in Colorado. Before I was able to become a waitress, I had to be a hostess for a month. One Saturday, we got pretty busy because there was a local baseball game happening. I was seating people pretty frequently throughout the afternoon. Toward the end of the lunch rush, a couple came into the restaurant. I remember commenting on the woman's large turquoise necklace, telling her how pretty it was as I showed them to a table on the back patio, having some useless and polite conversation with them the whole time. I went and got both of them waters and brought them to the table, told them their server would be with them shortly, then returned to the host stand. 5 minutes later, the same couple walked into the restaurant and towards the host stand. I was very confused and asked if they needed to be reseated. The lady looked at me, seemingly just as confused as I was, and I noticed her large turquoise necklace again. The man said, 2 please, and I instinctively grabbed 2 menus and told them to follow me, thinking someone was playing a joke on me. I turned the corner to get a view out to the back patio, where I sat the couple originally, and saw that the table was empty. Per the couple's request to sit outside again, I led them to the patio and noticed 2 waters and 2 menus sitting on the table already. I didn't know what to do, so I picked everything up and told them I would get them some new waters. I made my way to the bar to get waters, and the waitress from the back patio section came up and asked if I was okay. She said that 5 minutes earlier, she saw me walk to the patio holding 2 menus as if I was seating people, but there was nobody there. Then I came back with the waters and put them down as if I was talking to people, but the seats were still empty. She said she was on her way to come check on me because she and other guests on the back porch were concerned about what I was doing, talking to nobody. I asked if there were people there now, and she looked confused and said, yes. So, from what I can gather, I saw, talked to, and sat these 2 people before they actually came into the restaurant. I have no explanation for this, and I'm wondering if anyone else has ever had an experience like this. Case file number 353, written by Atlas Crosby. To witness your certain death, only you didn't die when you were supposed to. I've been a firefighter just shy of 10 years now. One night, a few years back, we got a call about a power line being down across a road. As a firefighter, we can't do anything about it. That's the power company's job. We can, however, divert traffic away from it. So we park the truck in front of the down line, and 2 of our other guys take their personal vehicles up the hill to block traffic. It's nighttime, so we have hazards on and emergency lights on our vehicles. I'm leaning up against one of my buddy's trucks, and I'm signaling to oncoming traffic with a flashlight. When they get to me, I tell them about the line and send them down a road just a little before the stop to get around it. The other 2 guys are on the opposite side of the truck, talking and waving a flashlight at the next vehicle approaching. This is a 3-lane road, I'm in the far left lane, with traffic coming towards me. It's kind of hard to determine speed when the vehicle is coming straight at you with headlights on. I'm flashing the driver, and it wasn't until about 10 yards away that I heard his engine accelerating. All I could get out of my mouth was, "He isn't stopping!" And then I watched a truck slam into my friend's truck from the other side of the road. I have no idea how I got there. All I know is I was seconds away from being hit head on. Then I watched the truck hit exactly where I was standing. Turns out it was a kid texting and driving and not paying attention. However, to this day, I have no idea how I moved across 3 lanes within milliseconds, and then watched a collision that would have had me standing in the epicenter. Case notes. Honestly, this strikes me as very obvious quantum immortality. To you, it just feels like you teleported. In a sense, you did, not your physical body. You didn't teleport through space and time. You instead, your consciousness, your sentience, traversed into another reality. That's what quantum immortality is. And it's fascinating, isn't it? But it must be jarring for sure. Some people even remember the dying process. I'm really glad you didn't. Case file number 354, written by Headphone Music. That feeling when you're a regular at a coffee shop that you've never been to before. I was headed to work today and had a bit of extra time, so I decided to get a coffee from a local drive-thru coffee stand that I had never been to. I typically drink the stale coffee from the break room at work after showing up 5 minutes late. I pulled into the drive-thru with one car ahead of me. As I slowed my car to stop, I made eye contact with the barista through the window. This was solid eye contact with a nod of recognition. The familiar look that this gal gave me sent me into a daydream. I started thinking, man, that would be cool to be a regular somewhere, like how I used to be a regular at Bill's, local pub, where everyone knew my name and my drink was waiting for me at the bar before I could even have a seat. As I waited for the car ahead of me, I played through a few scenarios in my mind where the barista greeted me with my coffee in hand, ready to go. I snapped back to reality as I saw the barista hand coffee to the folks in front of me and they began to drive away. I pulled up to the window to place my order and things went straight into the Twilight Zone. The interaction unraveled almost exactly as my daydream scenario. The barista greeted me with an undeniably familiar attitude, with coffee in hand. She said, "Good morning, here's your usual 22-ounce vanilla latte with 3 shots. That will be $7.50. She was spot on with the order. I should have been bamboozled by this, but this type of thing seems to happen to me often, daydreaming about a scenario and then having it occur almost in line with my thoughts. I grabbed my wallet and realized that I didn't have my debit card. I had left it at home, a $100 bill along with a 5 and 1. I presented her with the dilemma and she decided to take the $6 and float me a $1.50 rather than break change for the 100. She then told me, "Don't worry about it. You are a regular. You can get me back later. I guess I'll go back for coffee tomorrow and square up." Bonus file, written by Chad Wojak. When the devil himself offers you a ride, do you accept? Short background. Troubled childhood. Juvie. Blah blah blah. Anyways, I get out of rehab and hop directly into probably the most toxic relationship on planet Earth. Relationship ends, and that's where the story begins. I was pretty busted over it, and my buddy and his old lady swung by my house around midnight and invited me to a party at the lake. I refused at first, but figured, why not? Hang out and drink with good people. We hop in his truck and drive out to the bluffs. Basically, the road circles down into a turnaround and it's a 5-minute walk down to the water. We pull up and get out. Decide I need a minute before turning my social battery on and tell them to go ahead. I'll smoke a cigarette and be right behind them. They say okay and walk into the dark. As I drop the tailgate to smoke, an old late 50s car pulls up. Beautiful car, growling V8. Matte black, red pinstripe. Freaking gorgeous car. The driver stops in the roadway and gets out. Literally, the moment my eyes make contact with him, I have genuine fear in my gut. For reference, I'm not scared of anything. Like, I'm genuinely not scared of anything and I have never before or since felt this fear. This fear was fucking primal. Anyways, dude steps out, black suit, black shoes, blood red silk shirt and tie, square jaw, slicked back hair and perfect white teeth, and a soothing yet intimidating deep voice. He starts making small talk and asks for a smoke. I give him one and he lights it. asks if I like his car, and offers to give me a ride. I decline, and he immediately gets back into the car, starts it up, and drives off. Now on this road, it takes about 2 minutes to drive up to get back to the highway. Only one way in and out, and you can see the entire road leading to the highway. Hear my buddy yelling my name. He's pissed drunk now, yelling about why I'm taking so long. I say I literally smoked 1 cigarette. He says it's been a few hours and asks what I'm doing. I point to the road and say I was talking to that guy. We look. Nobody there. And there's no way he got to the road in that loud-ass car without being heard or seen. Him and his car disappeared with nobody but me ever seeing or hearing. Case file number 355. Written by I Am Almost Sane. My husband came home as a phantom, just this one time. My husband left for an appointment a couple hours ago, expecting as usual to be gone until noon. About 10 minutes ago, I was sitting in my home office at the computer when I heard either the front door or garage to laundry room door open. The little dog scrambled in excitement, as usual, and I heard my husband greet one of the dogs using the distinct pet nickname he always uses. The greeted dog started his usual little yips of return greeting. I got up to greet him, planning to say, "That was a fast trip," but then I got to the area where I could see the living room, kitchen, and laundry room. Fairly small house, just a few steps to here. No one was there. The dogs were still pacing and checking doors. I think to myself, maybe he came in, emptied his arms, and went back out to the garage to get more. So I opened the laundry to garage door, and no car. Confused, I think maybe he parked in the driveway, and I heard the front door. The front door is still locked. Dogs looked confused and following me around as I checked the rest of the house. No husband. So I called him. He's still an hour away and not done with errands. Phantom husband. I heard it. The dogs heard it. Now I need a drink. Case file number 356. Written by Correct Charge. The universe failing to load an object again. A few days ago, while I was organizing some stuff in my bedroom, something really strange happened. My dog likes to play by herself, dropping her rubber ball from my bed and jumping down to catch it so she can drop it again. While I was organizing some stuff, I saw what looked like her ball going past me faster than usual, as if she threw it. I thought it was kind of funny that it looked like she threw the ball, as it usually doesn't go far, so I just chuckled at her and tried to find the ball. I looked everywhere and couldn't find it. My bedroom doesn't have any place the ball could have hidden, as it's not large, and none of the furniture has legs or cracks where the ball could go through. Eventually, I gave up and thought maybe it was just something else in the corner of my eye. I was still a little weirded out, but forgot about it. Today I wanted to play with her and asked my girlfriend if she saw the ball, and she said she was looking for it too and couldn't find it. Then I remembered what had happened in my bedroom and got a little freaked out. I live in a medium/small sized apartment, so things are not hard to find. I can find all her other toys. That ball is her favorite toy, and I haven't seen her with it since then too. I decided to Google to see if anyone has had a similar experience with stuff just vanishing out of thin air and came across a few results about DOP, or disappearing object phenomena. I'm usually very skeptical about anything out of the ordinary. I'm not religious in the slightest or anything, but I wanted to share this because this thing is driving me crazy. Case notes. DOP is my favorite glitch at this point. It's the only thing that happened to me with a ball as well, although not with a pet involved. But we can just chalk this up to yet another example of disappearing object phenomena. There must be hundreds of thousands of examples to point to. Quite the dataset. Keep in mind, however, sometimes the object returns. I hope you're lucky, and your pet too. Case file number 357, written by Random Lady 91. Objects don't always disappear. Sometimes they just want a new view and relocate. 7 years ago, I packed a few of my daughter's baby clothes in a Walmart blanket set bag and wrapped that in brown paper and wrote her name on it. We were moving soon and army movers sucked, so I wanted to be sure none of our important things were lost and packed separately. Unfortunately, that box never made it to our next home and I was absolutely devastated. Yesterday, my mom texted me a photo of a baby blanket with Fort Leonard Wood on it, my daughter's, along with a blanket I had used with my son and hated and thrown away. My daughter's blanket was from Missouri and got lost in transit to Arizona. My son was born in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Colorado was the next move after Arizona. So while both blankets had existed in Missouri, the hated one was never in the lost box and got thrown away in the move from Colorado to Georgia. I have no idea how the box got in my mother's garage under boxes that had been there for years. I haven't seen her baby blanket in 7 years since that first move. Both blankets were also found in different boxes. The hospital blanket was found in my brother's baby things, a box that hasn't been packed or unpacked in 15-ish years. And the blanket I hate was found in my baby stuff, which was packed in probably about 20 years ago. Case file number 358, written by Sick Boy, LOL. His buddy was in 2 places at once, but didn't realize it. Okay, hear me out. I have experienced what you could call glitches in the Matrix throughout my whole life. Sometimes years and years apart, usually something minor and nothing of 100% certainty. So here's my story. A few guys in work got interested in paranormal, glitches, quantum weirdness, etc. And we were discussing things daily, swapping stories and researching on YouTube. It was on my mind constantly and I was actively looking for weird things throughout the day. And then it happened. We work on refurbishing trains and my team were all on the roof of the train working. At roof level, there is a platform either side the length of the train with stair access down to ground level. I made my way down alone, inside the train compartment, where passengers would sit to carry out a small job that needed doing. As I am working, I see a coworker called Dave walking towards me down the train compartment. I said, "I'm doing the HVAC now, mate," and he responded, "I've already done it." This wasn't a corner of the eye or a shadow. It was him, fully formed, real as could be, and I was looking at him the whole time. I glanced away for a second and looked back, and he was gone. This chilled me to the core, and it felt like I had been hit with a hammer to the chest. I immediately made my way back up to the roof to see Dave working away, unaware of what had just happened. I asked him, "Have you been inside tonight?" And he replied, "Nope." Now, glitches were embedded into my brain, and they kept occurring. Items going missing, people randomly appearing with no explanation, extremely unlikely events happening like unbelievable odds when throwing or dropping things. This kept happening for a week or so, and then just stopped. I tried to make sense of it all individually and as a collective, but I cannot explain it all away. The more I thought about glitches happening, the more they happened. It felt like I was decoupling from reality. I now try not to focus or obsess too much about things anymore, for fear of going too deep and losing my mind, or getting stuck in a place I don't want to be. Case file number 359, written by the Big N. You'd think you were crazy too if you saw your dad, and he was never there. I think I had my first glitch last night, and I'm not sure what to make of it. Just for information's sake, I'm 26 and my brother is 24. I've been staying with my dad for a couple of weeks because he had a heart procedure done, and I wanted to make sure he recovered fully, and just wanted to be here in case anything else happened. There's been lots of unexplainable events that have happened in this house, as it's a house I lived in for 21 years. Here's how it went down. I was in the kitchen with my brother, who I'll call T. T and I were making something to eat, and I had left the water running in the sink, something that drives my dad nuts. So as I leave the sink and walk into the living room, I see my dad sitting in his recliner with his usual attire, which is sweatpants and a hoodie, along with his Tottenham robe, watching television. I mean, I literally was within inches of him, and I looked right at him. I walked back into the kitchen, and T said, "You should probably turn the water off before Dad hears it and yells at you." And I responded, "What do you mean if he hears me? He's sitting right in the living room and he would have said something by now." We both went back into the living room and the recliner was empty and my dad's nowhere to be found. I'm completely confused. I was within inches of him. I looked right at him. Dad then proceeded to walk down the stairs and ask me and T what we were talking about. I told him that I had just seen him sitting in his recliner with his robe on, and he said, "I haven't had my robe on for a couple hours." My jaw could have bounced off the floor. I'm not sure what really happened, but I can say it has my head spinning still a day later. I've never experienced anything like this before. It was so surreal. Somebody please tell me I'm not crazy. Thanks for reading. Any insight, opinions, or just information in general would be greatly appreciated. Bonus file, written by Storm Clouds Gather. Hauntings in a 200-year-old home. I've lived in this house for pretty much my entire life with my parents, Nan, and brother. It's really old. This whole street was built like a couple hundred years ago, and it's really weird. Me and my brother are 90% sure it's actually haunted at this point. Our parents and Nan think we're nuts, but honestly, the houses around here are so old I'm surprised they're not all haunted. My brother says he hears kids' voices at night sometimes. He thinks he's hearing a few really little kids, and it's always been the exact same few voices, and he's been hearing them for more than 10 years, so it's probably not just neighbors talking or a TV or something. He's never been able to hear them very well, so he's only ever caught a couple of words. He says he's heard the words willow, country, downstairs, and the name Betty really clearly in kids' voices. He's also heard a woman's voice say, Thomas, once. My room will sometimes randomly have this horrible chemical smell, like it smells like paint thinner or something. We've never been able to figure out where the smell is coming from. A few years ago, my parents even caught the carpet pulled up partly because they thought the smell was in the carpet, but also because the carpet had a bunch of stains on it. I was a messy kid. And nope, it didn't get rid of the smell. We also smell smoke sometimes, when there's really no reason to be smelling smoke. No one's cooking anything, there's no candles, nothing that explains the smell. The smoke alarms even go off sometimes. They've all been replaced and they still do it, so it doesn't seem like a problem with the actual alarms. Occasionally, there's also a gross burning smell, like burning rubber or something. We wouldn't have connected the smells to anything paranormal, except we always get this weird, uncomfy feeling like something isn't right, and it's the same feeling my brother gets when he hears the voices. Last night, I was smelling the burning smell and the smoke, and my smoke alarm went off. I opened my door to let my mom in because she was carrying the stepladder, and behind her, I saw a pregnant woman in a long, old-fashioned dress kneeling on the floor with her hands over her face. I only saw her for a split second, but it was so clear. I also got this really sad feeling. I think she was crying or something, and I just felt so sad for her and kind of scared for her. Edit. Probably should have mentioned that my parents and my nan don't believe it's a ghost thing and think it's an old house thing. So they've been getting all kinds of professionals to check the wiring, check for gas leaks, check in the roof. They even paid for the neighbors to get their wiring and stuff checked in case it was a problem in their places. Terraced houses, you know. And nope, nothing wrong anywhere. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like and leave any thoughts you might have down below. I always like knowing what you guys think too.